evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me immense pleasure to have you all here with us this evening. As most of you are aware, We for Wildlife is a WMG initiative dedicated to wildlife conservation, something that we as a group are extremely passionate about. Expanding on this, there is an intriguing facet known as interspecies money. What is this? Why is this? And to enlighten us more on this topic, we are fortunate to have our esteemed friend and Atria University Director, Kaushik Raju, who will provide insights into the whats and whys of interspecies money. Over to you, Kaushik.
So a lot of you have been mulling over climate change, which is an important topic for all of us to figure out what needs to be done. And one of the facets of climate change is the extinction of other species. And we at Atria have been thinking about this for a while and have been working on an idea to say, how do we imagine a future where the other species can participate, have a voice, and can engage with us. So for this, I'm just going to ask all of you to just close your eyes for a minute. These are sounds we will never hear again in the wild. In the last 10 years, all the animals you just heard have been extinct. It's not that extinction has not happened before. What's happening now is the accelerated rate at which species are going extinct. Over the last couple of thousand years, species have gone, but the earth has had time to regenerate itself. With the aggression at which it's happening today, the earth doesn't have time to regenerate. And we're working on this idea. We're close to the 6th great extinction. And at this pace, we won't have anything left for the future generation and possibly nothing left for humans to survive on. Why is this happening? One, it's the growing population. Two, I believe, is the distance between our world and nature. We're all living in our bubbles, in our concrete jungles. And how do we make sure that engagement happens? How do we allow other species to engage in the economic world that we've created and have a voice to protect themselves? Empathy. Because we don't engage with them, we're not able to understand the other species. We don't really pay attention to what's happening. An average child asks about 73 questions. And that's one of the reasons when somebody asks you, when you engage, you're able to empathize with them, think about them, and nourish or create a world for them. the number of questions an animal can ask us, 0. But there are technologies today that allow us to understand what other species are thinking. They communicate in different ways. And that's the journey we are on. We're trying to create a digital world where we can use these technologies to understand what's happening in nature, take inclusive decisions when we are thinking about our growth, the future of this world. So how do we create that engagement? How do we create that interactiveness? So what we're doing in this idea called the interspecies movement is we're creating a digital world. We're giving every species a UID, like your Aadhaar card. We're bringing them into creating a digital twin for them, and also giving them a digital wallet where we as human beings will pay for the services that we take for them. Oxygen that we take for granted today, as trees get cut, is going to become a rarity. So what if we start paying for these services and these species can use that to protect themselves? So first step is to create the UID. Second step, and this is how we're doing it. We're starting with a pilot project with elephants. We've taken 500 elephants at the Nagarhole belt. We are creating digital twins for them, a digital identity. So if an elephant walks through somebody's farm, it pays a toll. So the camera takes a picture of it, it understands it's crossing this particular region, it pays a toll to the farmer, so he's not upset that some crops got damaged, but he's incentivized to allow for these animals to roam freely. The next is to create this digital world. Where we can interact with nature. Today we are all on our mobile phones. We cannot go to nature every day. So imagine that if 50 trees are cut in a forest, you can see it on your phone and you're affected possibly by way of tax. Your cost of oxygen tomorrow goes up. I think we will take this a lot more seriously and try to deter the fact that species get harmed at any point. The next is to look at, once the protection starts happening, what's happening on ground? Is it improving the overall quality? Are they sustaining? Are they going at a pace that we will not be able to recover from? So we can take decisions again. So 3 ways that we're going to create that engagement and checks and balances. First is the camera traps, so we can actually visualize what species are there. Are they moving? They're moving tracks. Where they're moving and what we can do to protect them. The second one is a very interesting one. If you want to understand the biodiversity of the region, we can actually get DNA samples. DNA is everywhere, from dead skin cells to hair follicles. So if you actually take water swabs of any region, we can actually accurately tell you what all species exist in a particular region. And the next step we're also looking at to tell you how much of a particular species exists, because visual traps can only capture a certain amount. So this is the second lab that we're setting up at the university, where we do DNA swabs, and we can tell you, by protecting a particular area, has there been an increase, decrease of a particular species, identifying new species, and we're using that, and all of you have heard of data being the new oil, so using that data to be able to raise money to use for protection. And the last is audio sampling. So with these 3 methods, all the conservation methodologies that we will use will be traced and data will be given to the public. We believe if we create that engagement, we allow for empathy, we believe a larger audience will take part in conservation. And the last is, one of the reasons I'm here to have this conversation, I'd like to thank V4Wildlife from WMG Group that got interested in the idea that we pitched to them, said we should engage with the audience here, saying this is the right audience to take part in this. We're saying we need to build all of this. It's going to take large crowdfunding that we want to do, possibly use CSR money. But the money that you put in today will actually be valuable. We're saying it's not just CSR money that you put in, but what will happen going forward is you will get biodiversity credits. I'm sure a lot of you have engaged in the carbon credit markets. The next version of the carbon credit markets is the biodiversity, because the value of biodiversity is a great benchmark of climate change and where we're going as a population. And that's being put in place. There are world groups that are working on the biodiversity credits. And we believe over the next 1 year, these biodiversity credits will be valuable and tradable. So, thank you. Thank you for listening to me. I'd like to thank WMG and We4Wildlife for giving me this opportunity.
There are 100 million different species coexisting with us on our planet. Then, between 10,000 and 1 lakh species are becoming extinct each year. Let us take a moment and think. Thank you, Kaushik. That was truly deep and mind-opening. I'm sure many of you have questions about this concept. Please feel free to interact with him over dinner. As most of you are aware, the GDP growth in India, especially over the last decade, has witnessed a significant upward trajectory, primarily attributed to the substantial contribution from the real estate sector. The sector's performance has been noticeable and impactful. We've all come across the concept of REIT, and Embassy has become a household name. Before we delve into the main session today, let's quickly familiarize ourselves with this concept. Taking us through this discussion, we have Shweta Reddy. Shweta Reddy is the head of marketing and communications at Embassy REIT, where she is responsible for the REIT's marketing outreach and communication MarCom initiatives across multiple stakeholders, including occupiers, investors, media, and policymakers. She's been in global leadership roles in the communication, marketing, and the PR space for over a decade and has worked across several countries and cultures. Over to you, Shweta.
Thank you, Anaga. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'm Shweta Reddy, and as Anaga mentioned, I'm the head of marketing and communications for Embassy REIT. Embassy REIT is delighted to be associated with this wonderful evening that delves into such a unique aspect of Indian history. Thank you, WMG, for this wonderful opportunity for us to be associated with this evening. I believe it's particularly apt for Embassy REIT to partner with an event like this, which aligns with the interests of the CXO community in India. Many of you sitting here might also helm companies that we at Embassy REIT are privileged to host. Conscious of not taking much time away from the primary agenda of this lovely evening, I'm going to keep this address very, very short. We're a nation that is truly shining, and we stand on the cusp of unparalleled growth. Our economic landscape, once defined by traditional sectors, is now undergoing a metamorphosis, and at the forefront of this transformation is the dynamic growth in the commercial real estate sector. India's office sector, one that we as Embassy REIT belong to, has grown at a remarkable pace. And if you look at our city of Bangalore, it's one of Asia's top performing office markets today. If I can throw some quick numbers at you, and maybe the next slide. If I can throw some quick numbers. Indian office roughly is about 750, 800 million square feet market today. REITs currently comprise 80 million square feet of that. So that's around 10%. This number can go up to 50% of the office stock based on REITability. And if you look at the US market, REITs comprise over 90% of the listed real estate equity market today. So that gives you a sense of future growth for the REIT sector as India grows. What are REITs? In 2 sentences, and that'll be my marketing pitch for the day. REITs are real estate investment trusts, are an excellent and efficient way to invest in commercial real estate in a liquid, transparent, highly regulated, and a professionally managed structure. Maybe the next slide, okay? While a relatively new concept in India, REITs have been globally around for over 60 years and currently have a $1.7 trillion market cap across 1,000 plus listed REITs. In just 4.5 years, through a pandemic, and with significant market volatility, REITs have come a long way in India. Today, there are 4 REITs that are listed, and that comprise of around 80,000 crores of equity market capitalization and a portfolio covering 112 million square feet of Grade A office and retail spaces nationwide. The total distributions by Indian REITs, they've crossed over 14,000 crores since 2019, and that's higher than the combined Nifty combined dividends distributed by real estate companies that form the Nifty Realty Index. So that's quite a remarkable achievement for the 4 REITs today. As India's first listed REIT, Embassy REIT is pleased to have paved the way. The reason for this performance is simple. Even as office continues to have its struggles globally, Indian office continues to offer the best of both talent and world-class office spaces, as our country has done for years. We like to believe we at Embassy REIT are playing a small, yet a critical role in this regard. Our 45 million square feet portfolio provides the world's best companies a total business ecosystem for India's world-leading talent to thrive. With the number of global capability centers, or what we call GCCs, in the country expected to grow to approximately 2,400 by 2030, and GCC headcount expected to almost touch 5 million, up from 1.9 million currently, the need for Grade A space across India has never been more acute. We are seeing those tailwinds blow across our biggest markets, most notably in Bangalore. The city's dominance in office demand is not just a consequence of its gleaming skyscrapers and modern infrastructure, but is deeply rooted in its ability to harness the best talent. This is a direct reflection of the educational ecosystem that Karnataka as a state has diligently nurtured over the years. A significant contributor to this educational prowess is Mysore, a city steeped in history and culture, particularly renowned for its unwavering commitment to education, positioning Karnataka as a major educational hub in India today. As we look to the future, it's essential to recognize the success of Bangalore and Karnataka as a whole is interwoven with the tapestry of education that the Mysore royals laid out centuries ago. And with that, I'd like to conclude my note. I hope you all enjoy the rest of this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Shweta. Before we move to the 2-hour action-packed session that we're going to witness here today, whoever wants to take a quick 5-minute break may do so while we wait for our dignitaries to arrive. We will reconvene in 5 minutes.
In the rapidly evolving world, staying ahead of the game is crucial. You will need a trusted partner to navigate the complex landscape and secure a brighter future. That's what WMG Group is, a trusted partner that serves all your financial, risk, CSR, fitness, and life needs. WMG Wealth, WMG Insurance Broking are 2 entities incepted with the purpose of offering you the optimal wealth management strategies and risk advisory solutions. Carrying forward a decade-old promise, we are committed to choosing nothing short of best for our 2,000 plus HNIs with more than 1,000 crores worth of assets under management, with solutions designed especially for our 450 plus reputed corporate clients. We have built institutional insurance advisory that is ready for tomorrow's market. We understand the importance of knowledge. WMG Elite, a flagship initiative of the WMG Group, brings together thought leadership, subject matter expertise, intellectual acuity to build a community with over 750 active CFOs who have aligned together to learn, grow, and to foster knowledge sharing. We are also a foundation. WMG Foundations, We for Wildlife, through which we are actively involved in CSR implementation for corporate giants. The foundation is dedicated to protect the ecosystem that sustains all of us and beyond. We help corporates to effectively manage their CSR implementation focused on wildlife conservation initiatives. We understand your world. We understand what expands your horizons. We understand you. We are WMG. We make gold.
Global captives continue to invest in India and India talent. NASSCOM expects the number of GCCs in India to increase to around 2,000 over the next 3 to 4 years, up from about 1,600. This demonstrates the growing demand for offshore solutions in the country. Embassy REIT's listing in 2019 has been a game changer for commercial real estate sector in India. If I look back, it's truly remarkable to see how far we have come since those early days in 2019.
India is a key market for Blackstone, where we've been a committed investor for the last 16 years. Indian office is an important investment for us, supported by favorable fundamental and trends like an availability of highly skilled labor and India's role as a tech hub.
Over the last 4 years, we have grown our portfolio from 33 million square feet at inception to an industry-leading 45 million square feet today. We leased a total of 11.4 million square feet across 257 deals and expanded our occupier base by 1/3. We launched a flagship ESG framework and announced our 2040 net zero commitment. And we enhanced our net operating income by 76% to 2,800 crores, delivered close to $1 billion in distributions, and expanded our investor base by 20 times to over 80,000 today.
India is emerging to be the choice for global product and service innovation. This is complemented by the aspirations of a fast-rising middle class. We increasingly see high-quality workspaces playing a critical role in hosting the talent that fuels this growth. Embassy REIT has a simple mantra: to deliver and manage office spaces for the future of our tenants, helping them to create an ecosystem that fosters innovation, collaboration and growth.
Leasing continues to be the key business driver for us. Our offerings encompass not only state-of-the-art workplaces, but also a supportive infrastructure that enables businesses to thrive.
As long-term asset owners, we at Embassy REIT are always committed to ensuring that we meet the growth potential of our tenants and their employees. Our development pipeline is critical in this regard. Over 90% of it is in Bangalore, which is India's best performing office market, and 1/5 of our pipeline is already pre-leased to major multinational companies from diverse markets such as JP Morgan from the US, ANZ Bank from Australia, and Philips, the Dutch healthcare major. Our acquisition strategy is very simple. We look to buy high-quality infrastructure-like parks that mirror what we currently have in our portfolio. Our acquisition of Embassy Hub in North Bangalore is a perfect example of this strategy. And our ability to finance growth rests primarily on our AAA stable balance sheet that always allows us to attract the best financing costs in the industry.
As we look forward, we remain focused on delivering best-in-class office spaces to our occupiers, meeting the growing demand of the offshoring trend in India, while continuing to delight our customers and other stakeholders.
Embassy REIT has helped revolutionize the REIT landscape in India and transform the perception of office as an asset class. The platform has seen tremendous success over the last 4 years. It has a great track record of corporate governance and a great track record of generating cash flows for investors. We are excited at the future of Embassy REIT and its contribution to the growth of India and its capital markets.
Our strategy has always been focused on creation of long-term total return value for our 80,000 plus unit holders. On our 4th anniversary of being a listed REIT, I want to take a moment to thank all our employees for their continued commitment and focus on delivering a solid business performance in a challenging environment. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to our valued unit holders, occupiers, business partners, and other stakeholders. Your continued support has been crucial to our success. Thank you.
Check. Dear all, I kindly request you to be seated, please. Please be seated. I request you all to kindly be seated. In the year 1399, a young and handsome prince, Yaduraya, wandered through a couple of small villages in Mysore. Fast forward to the year 2023, and we find ourselves amidst yet another charismatic prince. The pivotal year of 1399 marked the beginning of it all, the era of the Mysuru kingdoms, one of the longest ruling dynasties the world has witnessed. Are we discussing a span of 600 years? Yes, indeed. Stretching from Thiruvananthapuram in the southwest to Madurai, a bit southeast, and reaching the Hubli region in the north, my dear friends, this is the expansive realm we are contemplating. Do we truly comprehend the grandeur of this empire? Let us come together and explore its magnificence. Before we listen to the splendors of the Mysore kingdom, can we take a minute to listen to the Mysuru state anthem? Let us all rise.
Kayo Shri Gauri Karunalahari Toya Jakshi Shankarishwari Kayo Shri Gauri Karunalahari Toya Jakshi श्रीगौरी करुणालहरी तोयजाक्षी शङ्करीश्वरी श्रीजय चामुण्डिके श्रीजय चामेन्द्र श्रीजय चामुण्डिके श्रीजय चामेन्द्र नामाङ्कित भूमीन्द्र ललामनमुददे नामाङ्कित भूमीन्द्र ललामनमुददे कायौ श्रीगौरी करुणालहरी तोयजाक्षी शङ्करीश्वरी तोयजाक्षी शङ्करीश्वरी तोयजाक्षी शङ्करीश्वरी चिरमभिवर्धतां यदुकुलसन्तानश्रीः चिरमभिवर्धतां यदुकुलसन्तानश्रीः चिरमभिवर्धतां यदुकुलसन्तानश्रीः
Thank you. Please be seated. In order to delve into the magnificence and splendor of this majestic dynasty, we are honored to be in the presence of none other than His Highness Yaduveer Krishnadatta Chamraja Wadeyar, accompanied by the renowned author Dr. Vikram Sampath. Dr. Sampath has eloquently brought forth the untold stories of this dynasty in his book. Before we hear these untold stories and to commemorate the 15th anniversary of the book Splendours of Royal Mysore, we call upon His Highness Yaduveer Krishnadatta Chamraja Wadeyar. I request Shri Kra sir to kindly escort him. Shri Swaroop Anandji, I request Madan sir to escort him. Mr. Anand Narasimhan and Dr. Vikram Sampath, I request Rajesh to kindly escort them both onto the dais. We shall now unveil the book, Splendours of Royal Mysore. Thank you all. I request His Highness to kindly take his seat on the stage, and I now request Dr. Vikram Sampath to talk to us more on the highlights of the book. Dr. Vikram Sampath, where do I even begin? Bangalore-based historian Dr. Vikram Sampath is the author of 8 acclaimed books: Splendours of Royal Mysore, The Untold Stories of the Wadeyars, My Name is Gauhar John, Voice of the Veena, S. Balchandar, A Women of the Record, Indian Classical Music, The Gramophone 1900 to 1930, and Brave Hearts of Bharat. His 2-volume biography, Savarkar, echoes from a forgotten past and Savarkar, A contested legacy went on to become national bestsellers and were acclaimed by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. Dr. Sampath was elected as Fellow to the prestigious Royal Historical Society of UK in 2021. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy's first Yuva Puraskar in English Literature and the ARSC International Award for Excellence in Historical Research in New York for his book on Gauhar Jan. The book has also been adapted to theatre as a play Gauhar by Lilith Dubey and is being adapted to a Bollywood film by Ashutosh Gowarikar. Vikram was among the 4 writers and artists to be selected as a writer in residence at the Rashtrapati Bhavan in 2015. He has a doctorate in history and music from the University of Queensland, Australia, and was a senior research fellow at the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library in New Delhi. He's also an Aspen Global Leadership Fellow and an Eisenhower Global Fellow 2021 and is currently an adjunct faculty and research fellow at the University of Monash, Australia. An engineer mathematician from BITS Pilani and an MBA in finance from SPJ in Mumbai, Vikram is also a trained Carnatic vocalist. He has established the Foundation for Indian Historical and Culture Research, FIHCR, to foster new research in Indian history and the Archive of Indian Music, India's first digital sound archive for vintage recordings. He's the founder director of the Bangalore Literature Festival and curates the Z Group's Earth, a culture fest. Dear sir, over to you.
Respected Your Highness, Shri Yaduveer Krishnadatta Chamaraj Vadiyarji, Shri Swaroop Arsji, Mr. Anand Narsimhan, friends from WMG, Rajesh, Madan, Shrikar, and all of you, ladies and gentlemen, friends from the media who are present here. A very good evening to everyone. The mind is overcome with a lot of emotion today, and there's a cascade of memories that come gushing to me. Because I go back 15 years in the past to 4th of March, if I'm not mistaken, 2008, which was when in this city at the Raj Bhavan, the then governor of Karnataka, the late Sri Rameshwar Thakur, and also Maharaj Kumari Meenakshi Devi Avaru, had launched this book initially, Splendours of Royal Mysore, the untold story of the Vodeyars. And it also marked the foray of a very, shy, introverted, uncertain young boy who had literally made, his entry into the big, dark woods of historical research, not knowing that there would be sharks at every stage waiting to pull you down. And that too almost seemed like a one-time wonder. It was a one book, do it, and I'd probably go back to the corporate life that I loathed being in. But then destiny, as they say, always has different plans for you, and you are just an instrument in the hands of a larger force, just surrendering to do what you're asked to do, and the rest was history. So today, after 15 long years, and the book still actually capturing the interest and imagination of readers and Indians across. And for probably the first time, putting the story of Mysore, the wonderful history of our state, in a larger national perspective, I truly consider it, a privilege, an honor that a scion of the same family, someone who, I think in a lot of us who are from Karnataka, more than His Highness, we call the Maharaja of Mysore as Namma Maharajaru. He's our Maharaja. So that sense of love and affection that we have for this royal family, I truly consider it a great honor, a great privilege that Yaduveerji, you've come all the way, and you've been kind enough to also bless this edition with your foreword. A few days back, in this whole north-south nonsense that I think this country is facing today, there was a Twitter X statement that I put out, I'm half a Tamilian. My father's side, having come from the very fertile Tanjavur belt, Kaveri belt in Tamil Nadu, constantly, of course, being persecuted, being discriminated, opportunities not being made available thanks to the Dravidian movement that raged there all through the early part of the 20th century till the 1960s. One branch of my mother's maternal side that came from Maharashtra, and being half a Maharashtrian, persecuted again in the aftermath of the 1948 very gruesome anti-Brahmin riots that happened in the aftermath of Gandhi's assassination, about which we know so little about. Another branch of my maternal side came in from Hyderabad state, again being persecuted by the Razakars there just before India got her freedom. And where did all these persecuted Hindu families of this part of what is now so famously touted as the United States of South India, where did they all come to take refuge? Almost like, children coming back to the womb of their, mother, to the lap of their mother, who would protect them, who would give them shelter and also opportunities for their survival and growth. It was the Mysore state. And I think today, 75 years later, we may not even understand the importance of this. We may not acknowledge their contribution in doing this. But today, if in this part of Karnataka, the southern part of Karnataka, which was the old Mysore state, if Kannadatva is still alive, if Kannada is still, rich and thriving, if our faiths, if our language, if our customs, our cuisine, our costumes, every little thing, our festivals, the Dasara, all of this is still alive and thriving. It is only and only because of the Wadiyar family of Mysore, for which I think they receive so little. They receive so little, acknowledgement. And we in Karnataka, and particularly in Mysore, we are not the in-your-face, aggressive PR, going all over. I mean, Rajasthan sells itself so well, but Mysore doesn't. They remain shy and, laid back, and our work will speak for it. We don't have to tom-tom what we do from the rooftops. That is the general nature of this part of the country. So in the process, I think all these stories somehow get forgotten and lost, and we think of them as just yet another royal family among the 500-odd princely states that ruled India at the time of independence. And in the course of my brief intervention today, I hope I will be able to illustrate to you how that was not the case. My foray into this, before I get into that aspect of it, I'd like to go back on to memory lane and take you back to the time my foray into the whole writing of this book and into historical research itself was highly serendipitous. It was just a very, very happy accident, never planned, never thought of. And I think if there is one person I need to thank wholeheartedly for this, quite unexpectedly and with no expected help from his side, was Mr. Sanjay Khan. I'm sure most of you would know that in those days, on Doordarshan, the only channel that we all saw, there was this serial, very popular serial called The Sword of Tipu Sultan, with Sanjay Khan in the lead role. And if you remember, the royal family of Mysore was shown in an extremely poor light in that serial. The Maharaja of Mysore, then Immadi Krishnaraja Wadiyar, was shown almost like this, obese retard who was dancing along with the court dancer. The Maharani of Mysore, the very sagacious Maharani Lakshmi Ammanni Avaru, she was shown as one of those typical vamps from the Ekta Kapoor serials, constantly conniving, conspiring with one eyebrow up always, trying to pull Tipu Sultan down. And there was lots of, unrest, if you remember, in different parts of southern Karnataka then. And this was not politically motivated, no right-wing, left-wing, nobody actually spearheaded this, protest against the portrayal. As I said, in old Mysore state, you had the portraits of the Maharaja along with gods and goddesses in their houses. Even Gandhiji, when he came to Mysore, when he interacted with people of Mysore, they used to tell him apparently that this place is ruled by a god. And Gandhiji himself said this is Ram Rajya, and the ruler then, Nalvadi Krishnaraja Wadiyar, was termed by him as Raja Rishi, or a saint among kings. So for someone like that, I mean, the family which had touched the lives of so many individual Mysoreans, Kannadigas, this portrayal somehow upset the whole apple cart. And, you know, if you remember, there was also a fire that broke out in the studio, and Sanjay Khan's face was burnt and so on. And the local Kannada media was agog with lots of conspiracy theories that this is the curse of the Wadiyar, and this is why, you know, you portrayed him that way, and that's why you had to face the consequence. Now, at that time, I was a young boy of probably 12 or 13 years of age. And to be very honest with all of you, and I'm unashamed to say that, history was my most hated subject in school. And almost the maximum amount of punishments that I've ever received in my growing up years was for history and social sciences, kneeling down outside class, never being able to memorize who succeeded whom, which war was fought in which year, and all those extraneous, unnecessary details that we are fed with. Now, for someone like that, this somehow became, I don't know what happened, though family-wise there was no connection to Mysore at all. I just wanted to know the truth behind this false representation that was done. And thereby, it became almost like a family project. My whole family got roped into this, this research journey. And today, I also, along with the royal family, along with Yaduveer ji, I also want to acknowledge that aspect. My family, my maternal grandmother, Ajji, who of course is not around. She was not around in flesh and blood even to see the first book come out. She used to accompany me along with my parents too. And I didn't know Kannada then, or to read and so on. So she would help me. She would literally read those, there used to be this very extensive annals of the Mysore royal family called Shriman Maharaja Ravara Vamshavali. And then in Hale Kannada, there used to be several, kavyas, nibandhas written. Charanakavi Govinda Vaidya's Kantirava Narasaraja Vijayam, Chikkadevaraja Wadiyar's Chikkadevaraja Binnapam. All these things, she would just read it out and explain it to me. Typically, Ajji Kathe, that used to happen, and that was the research methodology. Then also meeting members of the royal family, meeting old-timers in Mysore, archivists, this little boy in half pants moving around there, asking questions, sitting in the corners of the palace. And I used to be good at a little bit of sketching, so I would make portraits of the Maharajas. And it was all for a logbook that I had kept for my personal use and for my personal, journey. And over 10 years, this madness lasted, even as board exams and bits pilani and this and that happened. There was that Mysore bug that had bitten. And slowly the interest expanded from that one king and queen who were shown in a bad light to the entire dynasty, which, as was mentioned, was one of the longest reigning royal houses, which ruled for 600 years, from 1399 to 1947, with only a 40-year interregnum where Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan had usurped the kingdom. But it was shocking and alarming that, such a long reigning house, and also with so many firsts to its credit, this royal family did not have a modern book written on it, which covered this entire thing, the political, the economic, the social, the cultural history, and the contributions that they made to the making of modern Karnataka. And so there is a very famous quote of American writer Toni Morrison, who said, if there is a book that you want to read and it hasn't been written yet, you must be the first person to write it. And so that is when I decided that all this research that was done over 10 long years could be put together in the form of a book. And that's how this book came about in 2008. Since then till now, I think thankfully there is a little more awareness that the history of India is not just the history of Delhi and some dynasties in and around that, as we are normally made to believe. Large swathes of India, particularly the south of India, which do not get the representation that they truly deserve, I think that's slowly coming to light. So as I said, in this writing of this book, I must, on a personal note, also acknowledge those family members of mine, my maternal grandmother, and of course my parents. We came from a very lower middle class family then, and literally went up the ladder through sheer dint of hard work. And at that stage and time when, just making ends meet for survival was so difficult, the fact that my parents would come all the way and it would be so easy for them to say, you'd rather improve your grades in history in school and not get so many punishments, sit down and mug it up and get better marks. Instead of doing that, the fact that they accompanied me to Mysore, got bored of it, and that's one reason my father said, I've heard enough of Mysore, I'm not coming for this evening to listen to you yet again about this. But truly, my father, my mother, who's no more, and of course my maternal grandmother, I owe a deep sense of, acknowledgement and respects for all that they have done to ensure that life actually took a different turn. Coming quickly to, and before His Highness, his intervention begins, I'd like to give a very quick primer on this 600-year-long history. Don't worry, I won't take 60 minutes. I will do it pretty fast. So 1399, as was mentioned, was when this dynasty was established by the intervention of these two young princes who came from Dwarka in Gujarat, according to legend. They come all the way to Mysuru, the land of Mahisha, where Mahishasura was apparently slain by goddess Chamundeshwari, who established herself on the hill there. And they were so enamored by the place, and that is when they there was a lot of political turmoil there in Mahishuru, and that is where they killed the local upstart and took over the reins of the kingdom and established the Wadiyar dynasty. And the Wadiyar, the very name was for people who were lords of 33 villages. So there were a number of other Wadiyars. Anybody who had control over just 33 villages could get that surname or title. So they were one among several other feudatories of the mighty Vijayanagar Empire, all through those almost 100, 200 years of its foundation. But once Vijayanagar collapsed with Talikota and the remaining branches also dissipated, that was when in 1610 you had the very illustrious Raja Wadiyar, who established his supremacy and autonomy of Mysore by breaking away from Vijayanagar and establishing the kingdom with the capital at Srirangapatna and ascending the golden throne that you saw in the AV also. And he also, a lot of the traditions of Vijayanagar were inherited, like the Dasara traditions, the Mahanavami Dibba that was there, that is still there at Hampi. All these traditions were bequeathed to the Mysore kings, and they carried it forward, adding their own improvisations to a lot of that. The Simo Langhana that is done on Vijayadashmi, all these trace back to the Vijayanagar times. And after that, of course, you had a series of very, very chivalrous, illustrious, and great rulers. Doddadeva Raja Wadiyar, who built the steps to the Chamundi Hills. The Nandi that you see there was also established by him. You had the raw, chivalrous Ranadhira Kanthirava Narasaraja Wadiyar. And I'm sure those of you who are Kannada speaking, I'm sure you would have seen that very wonderful Kannada film by Dr. Rajkumar, the one and only Rajkumar, who enacted the role in the movie called Ranadhira. Single-handedly, 25 wrestlers from Tiruchirappalli, killed. Ranadullah Khan from the Bijapur Sultanate pushed back, and Mysore literally growing its wings in the Deccan. You had also Chikkadeva Raja Wadiyar, who was a very astute administrator, and 18 departments of government that he established. Even today, the Karnataka High Court is called Athara Kacheri. And that was the same Athara Kacheri that Chikkadeva Raja Wadiyar actually established. And it's in commemoration of him that this is still called Athara Kacheri. And a very, very astute administrator who established the independence and autonomy of Mysore. But then, like all dynasties go through their series of ups and downs. You had a very depressing phase of weak monarchs who led the powers of the kingdom slip into the hands of their very powerful ministers called the Dalvois. And the whole situation was then exploited by a young man whom the Maharaja had actually literally bought as, as a benefactor. And that young boy was Hyder Ali. And running with the hare, hunting with the hounds, literal, Machiavellian kind of a story that unfurled later. A situation developed such that Hyder usurped the kingdom of his own benefactor. And though, of course, he kept the Wadiyar as a puppet king on the throne, he became the Sarvadhikari, or the supreme dictator. And under him, of course, Mysore won two great wars against the British. The first and the second Anglo-Mysore war literally beat the British till the very gates of Madras, all of that. And then, of course, you had his son, Tipu Sultan, whose, I think, to a large extent, a lack of strategy and so on, led to his own collapse in the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War, where he was killed in Srirangapatna. And after that, the British turned towards the Mysore royal family, which was lingering under the leadership of this brave woman, Lakshmi Ammanni, who ensured that the family comes back to power in 1799 through the settlement. Of course, under British, support and control. But herein lies also the difference. There were numerous other princely states in India which were all subservient to the British, rule. But what distinguished Mysore from the rest of them was, despite the strictures, despite the controls that were placed on them by the British, what did they do for the upliftment of their people to the best of their ability? And that is what distinguishes them from the rest of other princely states of the time. So under later Wadiyars like Mummadi Krishnaraja Wadiyar, Chamaraja Wadiyar, and the last, Nalvadi Krishnaraja Wadiyar, and the last ruler, Jayachamaraja Wadiyar, and also some of the best administrators that this state was blessed with, the illustrious Divans of Mysore, Rangacharlu, Sheshadri Iyer, Bharat Ratna Sir M. Vishweshwaraya, in very properly pronounce his name, unlike some people. And Albion Banerjee, and Sir Mirza Ismail, and several others, the amount of progress on all fronts, socio-economic, cultural, progress that Mysore saw was quite unprecedented. And I'll just list a few of them. In 1905, our city, Bangalore, became the first city in the whole country to be electrified, thanks to the Shivanasamudra hydroelectric project, which on its completion was the first hydel project in the whole country. And you had several, irrigation schemes that were developed then, the Tippagundanhalli Reservoir, the Hesarghatta project, during the Mysore rulers' time, of which we Bangaloreans are still beneficiaries. The water comes to us through some of these projects that still survive. The Krishnaraja Sagar Dam, the KRS Dam, on its completion in 1931, it was the largest reservoir in the whole of Asia and the second largest in the world after the Aswan Dam on the river Nile. And just one instance would suffice to tell, what was the story behind the construction of that dam. The plans for the construction of the dam began in 1908. There was a lot of back and forth between Mysore and Madras presidency because the British were in control. And it so happened initially the plans were inimical to the farmers, so the Maharaja pushed back. There was lots of back and forth. Finally, a largely beneficial scheme was laid out for the farmers of the Mandya Mysore basin. But the project cost was about 2.5 crores, which far exceeded the state budget at that time. Now you will not even get a proper 3 BHK or a villa or something in Bangalore for that rate, but those days that was the state budget. But since the project was beneficial for the people of the state, the royal family came up with a very, very unique experiment. All the jewels, the gold and silver, plates, ornaments were all collected and sent to Bombay, where they were pawned at competitive rates. And the money that was so raised was sent back as seed capital for the KRS Dam. And I don't really know how many such examples are there of selfless, contribution for a public project by the members of a royal family. Another instance which I would love to cite. Today we pride ourselves in the fact that Bangalore is a knowledge capital. We have the IT and all the other industries surviving there. But did all of that just come out of thin air and Was there no groundwork that was done to that? Of course there was, because in 1901, you had the Royal Society of London sending Sir William Ramsay, who was the Nobel laureate of chemistry, to come to India to set up a Institute of Higher Learning and Excellence in Science. Ramsay moved all over India and made a survey as to which place would be the best suited location to set up this institute. And he gave a report that Bangalore should be chosen as the place, because Bangalore had the best infrastructure then. I know it's a very politically incorrect thing for me to say that today, but once again, thanks to the progressive rule of the Maharajas, you had city improvement trust, city planning. Even now, if you see Mysore city, the way it's laid out, lovely, streets, gardens, all of that, the architecture. It was one of the very, very, well laid out cities, Bangalore, and salubrious climate as always, and the, people and everything was positive. So they decided on Bangalore. But at the same time, there was a rival bid that was done by Roorkee to snatch this, thing to this institute to their place. And seizing opportunity that this institute would be good for the state, you had the then regent queen, Nalvadi Krishnaraj Wadiyar's mother, Kempa Nanjamani Vani Vilasa Sannidhana Avaru, who, was not highly educated herself to understand what this actually meant, but she understood that this was so important for the state. So quickly, about 370 acres of land in Bangalore was sanctioned for the committee, and about 50,000 rupees annual grant given for the establishment. And that's how the Indian Institute of Science came up in Bangalore, thanks to the munificence of this lady. And the spin-offs of that were multiple. Bangalore becoming over time a knowledge center. Later on, of course, aeronautics, space research, all of that, a city of thinkers, poets, scientists and all of that. And much, much later, building on these already strong foundations that were laid by the Wadiyars, you had the IT boom and so on, naturally happening in a place like this. So I think when we also look at the present, I think tracing that journey and seeing, what is and who were the contributors to that becomes very important. So numerous such, experiments. The first ever, province in the whole of India to have a democratic form of government with the formation of the Praja Pratinidhi Sabhe in the 1880s. Later, the Legislative Council, a bicameral system in 1907 that was established. Extension of franchise to women. Implementation of things like animal husbandry, family planning, reservations for people, backward communities in government jobs, educational institutes across the country for different communities, minorities, women, every group, all of that, and plethora of industries, as we know, the Bhadravati Iron and Steel plant, the Mysore Sandal Soap, the Mysore Chamber of Commerce, different industries that came up in Mysore, all of this contributing to the economic progress of the state. Along with that, I think another very important contribution that this state, under the Wadiyars that Mysore made was to the cultural ethos of our state. Today, we pride in the fact that Bangalore is a very cosmopolitan place, and we accept every stream of thought. But that too had traced its roots back to the very benevolent rule of the Wadiyars. And I think, I don't know how to translate that word in Kannada into English. It is called Sahrudaya. They were Sahrudaya Maharajas who actually embraced everything that was good that came from everywhere. So even if you see in the architecture of Mysore, the Mysore Palace itself, it's a syncretic architecture. You have Indo-Saracenic styles, you have the Muslim domes, you have the roofs are painted like the Vatican in the Kalyan Mandap. So there's a Hindu style, there's a Muslim style, all of that amalgamating itself. You had a separate Mysore Shaili of painting, which was very different from what emerged in Tanjavur. In its relief, not studded so much with precious gems and all of that. It had its own. So there was a unique identity. And today I think that's more important because we keep talking of identity politics, identity, ours is best and so on. So Mysore did develop its identity, but that was not again in an aggressive manner or pulling down someone else and saying my identity is better than yours. You just develop your own unique ethos and identity, but never at the cost of running down someone else. In the field of dance, Bharatanatyam, there was a separate Mysore Shaili of Bharatanatyam, which sadly has completely gone extinct. The last doyen of that was perhaps Dr. Venkat Lakshmamma, after whose demise this dance, there are no practitioners now, where a large part of it, Bharatanatyam, which is performed seated and not with all the nritta that is done, in the Tanjavur Bani. And there too, the syncretism. You have a lot of Kathak mudras that were brought into the Bharatanatyam Shaili. You had a salam, kind of a thing. You never have a salam mudra in the typical Bharatanatyam. Of course, the salam was for the Maharaja, but still that became a part of the dance of Mysore. There's an old Kannada poem which says, Veeneya bedagidu Mysuru. Mysore as a citadel of the playing of the veena. So the veena, one of the oldest instruments of our time, which Goddess Saraswati is shown as playing, Mysore developed its own shaili of playing the veena. Again, very different from what Tanjavur was, what the other banis or shailis were in other provinces of India. Some of the greatest names of Indian classical music, Carnatic music, were in the Mysore court. Mysore Sadashiv Rao, Mysore Vasudevacharya, Bidaram Krishnappa, Veene Sheshanna, Shamanna, Subbanna, Venkatagiriyappa, Harikesh Nallur, Muttaya Bhagavatar. A long list goes on. But what was again unique about Mysore was it was not just the Carnatic Shaili that was encouraged like other princely states. You had the Hindustani musicians too finding equal importance there. Abdul Karim Khan spent lots of time in Mysore, and on his way back is when he passes through North Karnataka, and that's how the Kirana Gharana gets established in those parts. And that's why North Karnataka is the citadel of all the Kirana doyens, Gangubai Hangal, Bhimsen Joshi, all the Kumar Gandharvji, and all of them. You had Barkatullah Khan, Gohar Jan, you had several musicians from the north who found place in the Mysore court. But alongside, there were also Western classical musicians. Today in the field of music, where fusion is seen as confusion and people, the Puritans frown on that, you had in the Mysore court a wonderful melange of not only the Indian classical musicians, but Western classical musicians who were forced to interact with each other. Don't operate in silos. Learn from each other. Indian classical music had to be notated, had to be written down like the Western, this thing. And you had the palace bands which played all these tunes. And so Otto Schmidt on the violin, you had Margaret Cousins on the piano, and our own Veene Sheshanna on the veena, having a jugalbandi in the 1920s, much before the rest of the country probably even awoke to the idea that different styles can coexist. So this syncretism, this coming together of various styles is what also gave, in addition to the social, culture, the economic progress through industries and educational institutions and all of that, the cultural ethos on which we build and pride the modern Karnataka of today, those foundations too were laid by the Wadiyar rulers of Mysore. And that is why what I started off with, that while we may not acknowledge them enough for what they do, their legacy continues to live on. In fact, in his address to the Legislative Assembly in Karnataka, Mysore state, after independence, C. Rajagopalachari had told people, he was the first Governor General, of course, and he had told the newly elected members of the independent Mysore state, that successive rulers under His Highness's government have established this province to a great level of progress. And he says it is not easy to maintain the level to which they had striven to get this state on its foot. And he said, we in national agitation have taken on a very great responsibility. And he ends by saying, if I were here, I would not sleep peacefully because I knew that there's so much work to do. Of course, sadly, I think several successive chief ministers of the state continued to sleep peacefully, which is why, the level of progress is not expectedly what it needs to be. But nonetheless, I think history gives us that that mirror in which we can identify ourselves and also see where we have come from, take genuine pride in that, and chart a course ahead for the future. With these words, thank you so much for a patient hearing and also for being part of a very, very, for me personally, a very emotional, a very, something that I'm deeply, in love with, the whole ethos of Mysore, just for being here and sharing my joy on this very significant occasion. Thank you so much.
Check. Intriguing and interesting are the two words that I can think of after what Vikram spoke. To elucidate a little more and give us a real glimpse into the Mysore dynasty, we have His Highness Yaduveer Krishnaraja Chamaraja Wadeyar. His Highness is the 27th head of the royal family of the Kingdom of Mysore. As a sign of the royal house of Mysore, he continues to uphold the rich tradition and culture of the Wadeyars of Mysore, thereby continuing to preserve the culture of the Deccan over their 600 years of presence. Additionally, His Highness continues to align himself to the causes of sustainable environment and betterment of education, motivated by the great work and contribution of his ancestors. His Highness is an avid reader and enjoys playing the guitar and the veena. Over to you, sir.
Vikram ji, Shri Anand ji, members of my family, our friends at WMG, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. On this wonderful occasion, our congratulations on behalf of the Palace to Vikram on completing 15 years and the relaunch of Splendours of Royal Mysore. I was just about 16 when the book came out, and at the time, of course, there was a part of the family that, of course, contributed as well in terms of their insights, and there was part of the family that weren't all too flattered about the book. And I, at a very formative stage and just getting a lot of pride about Mysore, you'll have to forgive me, Vikram, but belonged to that faction of the family at the time. But as many of us know, when forced to look in a mirror, we often find fault at the smallest of things, when actually the whole picture is often one that is quite palatable. So, in fact, I always have said this to Vikram multiple times, and he has mentioned in his own speech, there wasn't a contemporary account of the history of Mysore up till that point. There was one in Kannada. There were, of course, Haivadan Rao's via the University of Mysore that was published way before independence, that only covered up to 1799, and various other smaller studies done, but nothing in the mainstream contemporary account. And I think in many ways a significant part has been played in the revival of Mysore history by Vikram's book. So it is not just the 15 years completing here is also thanks to you to, in many ways, to reviving that history and letting all of Mysore know about not just the palace history, but the history of the state itself, which I have always said we are joint custodians to. It is not the palace singularly, but all of us that are custodians to the rich history of Mysore and India itself. And upholding that and moving forward is a joint and collaborative effort. And it will take many more hands to see all of that history come of light, not just Mysore, but many others that are there. And so once again, congratulations to Vikram. And we hope the book continues many, many issues and continues to be this sort of beacon for Mysore history and the starting point going forward. They have asked me to, of course, speak on my own family, and I don't find there's not much meaning to that. I don't wish to talk too much about it. Vikram has highlighted many things on it. I just wanted to point out a few things with regards to princely India itself. When looking back at that entire era, of course, we are now re-evaluating the perspectives that we were all educated into believing was the right way of looking at pre-independent India. And in many ways, one area which is perhaps not shed enough light on and perhaps not gaining the true perspective it requires is that of 1/3 of India which was governed directly by the princes or under the princely India. And it is not just Mysore. There are multiple examples of many things. In fact, the number of areas where something wrong has happened is far less compared to where many rights were done. You look at the Maharaja of Baroda, Sri Sajirao Gaikwad, whose state in many ways echoed Mysore. You look at Maharaja Ganga Singh of Bikaner, who was famously the only non-white person to sign on the Treaty of Versailles. You look at the participation of the princely forces in the First and the Second World War. In many ways, if not for the aid and the sacrifice of the Indian soldiers, many of whom belong to the princely states, the world, the free world as we know it today, would not exist. So there are many aspects of princely India which need highlighting and need re-evaluating in many fronts. And while we are individuals like Vikram who are spearheading this charge with their many books on the brave arts of Bharat and Veer Savarkar, etc., re-evaluation even in princely India is very much required in order to gain the true sort of perspectives of the time, which were very much different to what we understood from the socialist era of India, which unfortunately cast a very negative image of the princes overall. Saying that, I would have much more to add on, but I think it would be much more intuitive today, or much more, I think, engaging if we allowed the audience to ask questions. And so I leave the floor open up to you, and I'm happy to interact on any which matter. I wanted to again thank WMG for organizing this lovely event. Beyond all the lovely events, they do something that is particularly appreciative from our end, especially from the Mysore family, is the fact that they dedicate most of their CSR activities to wildlife conservation, something that is really not done at all. And coming from a family that has a long history and appreciation of wildlife, in fact, you didn't mention one thing: all of the major tiger reserves in Karnataka and why all belong into the old area of Mysore. In fact, if you look at the British administered region, there aren't very many tiger reserves there, but all of the major tiger reserves always more or less fall into princely India. So it was because of the fact that princely India enjoyed conservation and enjoyed wildlife. Yes, there was that aspect of hunting as well, but it was done in a conservation manner moving forward. That's why most of the tiger reserves are in princely India as well. The WMG group doing this wonderful initiative of taking part in wildlife conservation, their wildlife conservation activities, is truly laudable, and it's always a pleasure to be a part of their programs. I think they're doing wonderful service to all of us here in Bangalore in bringing these wonderful programs here for all of us to have these wonderful evenings. So thank you very much, WMG. My congratulations to Vikram again, and wishing you all a very good evening. We look forward to the interactive session here. Thank you.
We're open to any questions that anyone would like to ask. Yes, sir, please. Can we have a hand mic, please?
Good evening. I'm Dr. Rajkumar Khatri. I have the privilege of serving Karnataka, state of Karnataka for 33 years. I have one confirmation question from Dr. Vikram and one request from His Highness. The first one is that, is there any connect with the puja at Tirupati? And whether the Mysore family used to give some grant, regular grants. Second is that I understand in the Oriental Library, there are first-hand rights and the notes of Maharajas about the goddess Chamundeshwari and Shakti. So those people who want to study the Shiva Puran, Vishnu Puran, and then talk about Shakti or draw the paintings, they would like to access some of the roles. Because it's quite famous, Om Hrim Namah Shivaya, Om Namo Narayana. So the Hrim part, the Shakti, has not been more effectively portrayed. Thank you.
I mean, I can, if you want to answer the Tirupati thing. So we do have a connection to Tirupati pretty much from the time of, there were several, in fact, if you go through the Tirupati, all of the coins they have from from time immemorial. The most amount of coins are from the Mysore state there in the archive. So there's Mr. Dr. Narsimhan in Mysore, who contributes regularly to a paper there, a daily in Mysore. He has done the entire documentation of all the coins in the treasury in Tirupati. And so you will find coins from various eras of different kings in Tirupati, and the most number are all Mysore coins. So clearly there was a lot of interaction there and a lot of donations from the palace. The traditions that are linked up are primarily from Krishnajwadya III, or Mummadi Krishnajwadya as we say. He, of course, the cultural revival of the entire state from pretty much all of the temples, and during his month of Ashada is when you see all of the major celebrations in Chamundi Hills, in Shrikanteshwara temple in Nanjangud, in Melkote, including his Krishnaj Mudi there. So it all coincided with his birthday. And similarly in Tirupati, he started the Pallavotsavam, where they bring the Utsav Murti to the, what is now called the Karnataka Bhavan or whatever, but that was the Mysore Bhavan before, which was again land purchased by him and the endowment put in those days, so that this festival would take part and the Utsav Murti would be brought in to the Mysore Bhavan, or now the Karnataka Bhavan. Besides that, of course, various other endowments were done and given to Tirupati at various stages by various kings, and there was daily from the palace offerings sent in, including ghee and other items for Abhisheka, etc. And so it was always a very close relationship that Mysore had. It never came under Mysore state at any point in history, but all of the kings of South India, I think, always had some level of patronization towards Tirupati, and certainly Mysore was, especially in the modern era of history, one of the more I would say, donated quite a bit of towards Tirupati. So that was the link there. In terms of what is at the Oriental Research Institute, during the state times itself, it was all with the University of Mysore. It was set up by Mummadi Krishnajwadya's adopted son, which was Chamarajwadya X. And of course, amongst various other things, famously in the Oriental Research Institute was found, Chanakya's Arthashastra was found there for the first time after many years. People knew of its existence, but the actual text, the Tamil text, was found there, and it was translated and then made available to the entirety of India. So besides that, of course, as you said, there are many texts on Devi with commentary of Rajas available, and I'm sure the University of Mysore would be happy to engage any academic towards research that is there. With regards to the actual texts of Shakta, etc., which come in, I believe they are all, of course, of North Indian origin, but they were translated during my grandfather's time, more or less, or they're Sanskrit in origin, I should say, they were all, and they were translated to Kannada in the Sri Jayachamraj Granthamalika, which was specifically set up as a press to translate from pretty much all of the relevant itihasas and Vedas that were there, and Puranas as well, to Kannada, so that it was available for the Kannada-speaking person to read it in Sanskrit, but in Kannada Lipi. So those were the primary texts that I'm aware of, and I'm sure the Oriental Research Institute via the University of Mysore will be happy to engage for your particular requests if you have the keywords directly.
Yeah, I think His Highness has already answered the question. I just want to add that, yeah, as he mentioned, I think it was Mummadi Krishnajwadya who is a grossly misunderstood ruler, as somebody who was profligate, who squandered away the kingdom and so on. But as he mentioned rightly, the cultural revival also was so important at that time. Wilkes also mentions that at the fall of Tipu Sultan in 1799, all over Mysore state, there were only 2 temples where pujas were being conducted. Everything else was stopped. So much for all the propaganda of him, being a great secular ruler. So at that time, to actually revive and bring back the traditions and the pujas, that was equally important. Then the several treatises that he wrote, Sri Tattva Nidhi, numerous others, on various aspects, not only on music, on astronomy, even the Ganjifa cards, that is a Mysore speciality, on numerous topics that he himself wrote about. And the last Maharaja, since you spoke also about the Shakta traditions, the last Maharaja was Jayachamraj Wadiyar, was a Sri Vidya Upasaka himself. and a great connoisseur of music, a composer. Of course, he was trained in Western classical music. He and his sister Rani Vijaya Devi in the Trinity College of Music in London. But under Mysore, Vasudevacharya is where he learned Carnatic music. And from 1940s onwards, he started composing kritis. And 97 kritis of the highest order are, his, compositions. And many of them, and they're all in very rich Sanskrit. Nothing in Kannada or any other language, no Telugu, no Kannada, no other languages. Everything is in Sanskrit, and there is a huge similarity to the Muthuswami Dikshitar style of writing. And his pen name was Sri Vidya. And out of the 97, I think majority 50 plus were on the Devi, and very much like, you had Dikshitar's kritis, the Navavarana kritis, and so on, which talk about the 9 enclosures or the avaranas of the Sri Chakra, which is the basic element of upasana or puja for a Sri Vidya Shakta. Similar kind of compositional style that the Maharaja also uses. In a very, very esoteric manner, all the enclosures, the yoginis, the different details are mentioned of each of the avaranas, just as Dikshitar does, Muthuswami Dikshitar does in his this one. So now I think for a long time, even these kritis were not popular. Nobody even knew. Even Carnatic musicians in Chennai and all these other places would hardly sing. Only that Sri Mahaganapatim Bhajeham, which was his first composition in Rag Athana, that was the only thing that people used to sing. But these Devi kritis, nobody used to sing. Now I think there's a book that's come out recently with all the 97 kritis, with notations and everything. Very tough to master, very, very difficult, words and so on, which also showed his erudition and the philosophical aspect of it too. It was, the esoteric nature of it, not just a composition for the sake of music only, but there was also a philosophical angle which he brought into it, which I'm glad now probably slowly that will get revived as well as the Maharaja's kritis. And there was a Russian composer called Nikolai Metner, and the Maharaja is supposed to have heard about Metner, really being in penury on an interview he gave in the BBC or somewhere. And Metner and the Maharaja never met ever in life. But after hearing about his penury and his bad state that he was in, he immediately sanctioned money for, Metner. There was a Maharaja of Mysore's Metner Society that was established, and 12 of the compositions of Nikolai Metner were also published and popularized. So that was the Sahridayata that I was talking about.
We'll just take one last question from Sai Swarupa.
Yeah. Thank you. It's mesmerizing listening to all the details. My question is about, I just realized the family's role in establishing an Indian Institute of Sciences, and personal thank you, because my husband he did his master's from there, PhD from there, and it's kind of painful to realize that while the institute has a very notable statue of J.N. Tata, nothing of the contributions from the royal family has been mentioned, anywhere prominently at least. So can that be corrected? I mean, that's painful.
I believe they have a statue of bust of Krishna Vaidya in the old building that is there, which they honor every time. And to the Indian Institute of Sciences credit, they always do in their newsletters, etc., whenever it is either the birth anniversary of Vanivila Sannidhana or of Krishna Vaidya, they always do send in their congratulations, etc. And they always do provide a write-up from the Indian Institute of Science there. And they've always involved us in their various activities at the Indian Institute of Science. So they have been doing their part. Of course, there are many other ways that it can do, but from a family, I forgot to say, from my grandfather's time, I wanted to quickly mention at the end of it, there was a time when there was a lot of successive chief ministers, as you said, Vikram, have been creating a lot of, we've had a lot of trouble with them, it's no big secret. And of course, the first chief minister, Kengal Hanmantaya, was no such there was not much difference in the way things happened even then with my grandfather. And unfortunately, of course, he was facing sort of tumultuous times with the polls, etc. And so he decided to celebrate my grandfather's birthday and be a part of the celebrations in Mysore. And so he attended what is the Vardanti, or the birthday according to the Panchanga in Mysore. And in his speech, because at that point is when my grandfather gave up the Raj Pramukh so that all the Kannada-speaking areas could be unified to the state of Karnataka, and that's why we celebrate the Karnataka Rajotsava on November 1st. So the naming of Karnataka only happened in 73. So from 56 to 73, the state of Karnataka was called Mysore still. And so at the time, he says, on behalf of all the Kannadigas, I thank you very much and for your sacrifice. So my grandfather, in his address, says, that, you know, my dear Chief Minister, you have said in your address, referred to my sacrifice for the state, and that is not my perspective. The rule of the era of the Maharajas, the objective of the era of the Maharajas was to see that people were fit to rule themselves. That objective has seen its completion now, and now people in their full capacity to rule themselves are ready, and so the era of the Maharaja has served its purpose, and now it's the era for the people to move forward and rule themselves. And that is the same principle or the same whatever tattva we follow in the palace, and we look forward to going forward. And so whether there is a bust or not, we understand that today's populace and the general Kannada population understands the contribution of the time, and we also understand our role in it and our continued role towards ensuring that the people who formed India at the time and contributed to the formation of India had a certain set of ideals, and upholding that moving forward is the most important thing, rather than perhaps busts and other things which will come and go. And you know, it only takes a few incidents for it to be pulled down as well. So I think it's more important that we do such interactions and move forward in a more lighter tone.
I must also add that Swami Vivekananda, to fund his Chicago trip, one of the major contributors to that was the then Maharaja of Mysore, Chamaraj Wadiyar. And there are so many letters between Swamiji and the Maharaja, and it is said, I mean, we wouldn't know these as documented proofs, because Swamiji also met Tata in the train, and that's when he discussed about the need for education and how that was only panacea for all evils. And so it was like he was bringing together the businessmen and also the ruler and everyone. And probably they say that the only voice recording of Swami Vivekananda on a cylindrical record, wax cylinder, was made in the Mysore Palace in the 1890s or so. And that, of course, on YouTube, there is this hoax. Rajesh was also asking me yesterday. There's the hoax video which says this is the original voice of Swami Vivekananda. Unfortunately, that's not. And they also attributed to the Mysore Palace records. That cylinder, I think, was destroyed in the fire that broke out, towards the end of the 19th century. And then the new palace was built. Unfortunately, that original voice, the only recording of Swamiji, was lost in that. But just to illustrate the closeness between, Vivekananda and the Mysore royal family.
Magical and magnificent. I'm sure that secretly we've all wanted to be part of a dynasty and specifically live in a palace. I'm glad we got an opportunity to understand firsthand what and how it feels to experience one, if not physically, but at least through the magic that is created here. I kindly request Rajesh sir to kindly escort His Highness to take his seat in the auditorium. Thank you so much. Sit back and relax, beautiful people in the auditorium. The next segment is a historical and culturally relevant topic. So lend me your attention for the next 20 minutes, and I assure you that you won't regret it. I now request Mr. Anand Narasimhan to come onto the dais. I request Rajesh to kindly escort him. Anand Narasimhan is the Managing Editor, Special Projects and Senior Anchor at CNN News 18. He writes extensively on Indian politics and sports. He's a much sought-after speaker and anchor. India's history stretches back 5,000 years, and while evidence supports this extensive timeline, the question remains, how deeply have we delved into it? We've come across the Mauryas who went up to the far west, the Cholas who went far east, and the Ahom dynasty of northeast India, read about them, heard tales, but do we truly understand them? Have we grasped the depth of our culture and its spirit? It seems that much research has not yet been done, but to challenge this perception, I now request Anand to enlighten us.
Namaste, Jai Hind. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very, very much for having me here. Thank you, Dr. Vikram Sampath. Your Highness, lovely to meet you. Thank you very much. And a lot of what you are doing or what your family has done, I hope in some form or the other you're continuing to do the same. And that's a question that remains, and I'll come across to you with your kind permission in some time. And of course, WMG, thank you for having me here. I've taken the day off to be here. That's how much history, research, our culture, and Dr. Sampath's work, or Vikram's work, matters to me, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm so happy to see a full house. It's amazing to see a full house on a conversation which many would find boring and irrelevant. That's what was done. But somewhere, our history has been wiped out from ours. Not just from our libraries, not just from our archives, it's been wiped out from here too. It's been wiped out. We're being weaned away. Let's try and understand this. So many Kannadikas, so many people who've made Karnataka their home, and for them a lot of what was disclosed today was shocking. Oh, we didn't know. Oh, we didn't know. Oh, we didn't know. So what do you know? What do we know? What do we know about us? Who we are as Bharat, what binds us, what connects us. And that's where I think what Vikram is trying to do with the foundation that he set up for historical and cultural research, and that too for Bharat, is very important. I'm going to focus on that only, ladies and gentlemen, amidst a lot of other questions. One of the first things I want to ask you, Vikram, what is the first aspect? See, if a Swami Vivekananda needed the Wadeyars to fund his trip to Chicago, I know Srila Prabhupada borrowed money from the Birlas, from the lady herself, quietly, to get onto that ship before he went abroad. You need money. You need money. Especially when you want to do research. You need a lot of money. And you are saying, we need to do a lot of research. Who's going to cough up this money is one point. Who's going to do the research is a second point. And three, for whom are we doing it for? Because a lot of us, after this evening, are not going to pick up another book and read it. Touch your heart and tell me how many of you are even going to read the Splendours of Mysore. In a full house, after 5 seconds, because other hands were going up, there are some hands that have gone up. But we still don't have a full house of hands going up. Please understand, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't know our history, we are getting rid of our roots. And if we don't know our roots, we are not going to pass on knowledge to our next generation. And that next generation is going to be further delinked. And when you're by the river like a huge banyan tree, your roots are deep. No matter what the flood, the tree remains. But the moment it's uprooted, it's nothing but a log that can just flow aimlessly, endlessly, and it can take wherever the river takes it away. So what do we want us, our civilization, our next generation to be? It's a big question, Dr. Sampath. That's a big ask. How are you going to do it?
Thank you, Anand. And before I come to the first part, of course, Lakshmi is needed for Saraswati to thrive. That is another issue. But I'll first address and also illustrate what is the whole idea of this foundation of Indian historical and cultural research that I have established. What is the idea and the genesis behind it? Now, there are many defects as I see it of Indian historiography. I illustrated one of them in my intervention earlier, that it's a very Delhi-centric narrative. large parts of India do not feature in it. The south of India or even the northeast of India, these do not get their pride of place, which they truly deserve. There are also, I mean, in the discipline of history, a multiplicity of narratives needs to thrive. There needs to be differences of opinion, there has to be dissent, discussion, debate, and all of that. But unfortunately in India, particularly after independence, we've had a very monochromatic stranglehold of a very ideological kind, which has been exerted on the way we look at our own past. And
is that actually history or historian?
No, I would not go into social media,
Is it distortion of history or is it itihasa as it happened?
No,
what has been taught to us and what's been peddled since independence?
No, I would not call anything. I mean, there are different versions. I always say, when I describe what is history writing, we all as children used to read this poem of the blind men and the elephant, right? So literally the elephant in the room here is history. And all the blind men were asked to touch different parts of the elephant and say, what do you think, how the elephant looks? So one blind man says it looks like the trunk, one says like the tusk, someone says wide ears, someone says broad, body, and so on. They were all correct, but they were all wrong also, because it is a sum of the parts. So history too, I think there are multiplicity of opinions that needs to thrive. There is no one single, there is one truth.
Are you trying to say that known famed historians, when they say that Yudhishthira was influenced by Ashoka and Buddhism, they are actually looking at the elephant like the blind man?
No, this is what happens when a TRP based,
No, but that's the history that's been taught to us. Those are the people who wrote our history books. Those are the people who coined our history text that was taught to us. So, I'm challenging Vikram here because we all need to be challenged a little. Please continue, Dr. Sampath.
No, I'm getting there. I'm getting there in steps, Anand. So there's a very ideologically, rooted kind of a looking of our own past. And I'll name it for what it is. It's a Marxist historiography that has ruled the roost. Where even in British India, you had a nationalist school of historiography which thrived with the likes of Sir Jadunath Sarkar, Dr. R.C. Majumdar, V.K. Rajwade, Bhandarkar, several people who were there, even in colonial times. But the sad irony is after independence, the alternative version, so the one set of blind men were completely asked to shut up and not talk. There was only one blind man who was given the authority to tell us everything about what our past is and how do we look at it. And what were the distortions? Of course, there were distortions that were produced because they were limited by their capacity. They were also limited or constrained by the ideology that they were operating under. One is, if you open our history textbook today, and I'm sure you would be looking into what your children or grandchildren are reading, the history of India is never seen as, in first person. There's no sense of ownership. You're almost reading it as the history of some other country. There is a constant sense of being apologetic about your past, always stressing only on the negatives. Every society has its share of positives, negatives. It's almost as if for 5,000, 6,000 documented years of our past, our ancestors did not have any achievements. A complete disconnect from our roots, emphasizing very, very little on the Indian mind and its achievements in various fields, whether it's philosophy, sciences, metallurgy, mathematics, Ayurveda, yoga, all these different branches, architecture. And another colonial construct, which was that we were not even a nation. That it was the British who brought us a sense of identity. And I think a lot of us educated Indians, subconsciously we think of that, if not for the British, we would be at each other's throats.
5-second intervention. Was this history written to make us think we are nothing but a bunch of losers?
Yes, that was the next thing that I was talking about, that a long litany list, and I think that's what we discussed in the last 1 year back with WMG when we discussed my book, Brave Hearts of Bharat, that if you even remember the history books that we read, it was a litany list of battles that we as Indians lost, right from the invasions of the Greeks, the Huns, the Shakas, the Scythians, all of these people, to the Arab invasion of Sindh, the Turkic invasion, the Mughals, the Timurids, and then of course the Dutch, the Portuguese, the French, the British. Everybody kept coming here and we kept covering in front of them and we became, subservient. Now today, if we are the only pre-Bronze Age era civilization that is still surviving, our poor ancestors must have put some resistance, they must have shown some courage also and some pushback. Otherwise, we would have been wiped out. Within 50 years of the passing away of the Prophet and the hordes of the Caliph going on an expansionist drive, almost the whole of Persia, Syria, all these places became Islamized. But it took them 500 years to establish the first Islamic Sultanate in Delhi after the Arab invasion, 712 to 1206. So what was happening during this time? Who were the people who were pushing back? What were the, stories of valor and bravery and, survival amidst all odds? We spoke of Mysore earlier. In the midst of so much, Tipu Sultan, who did not even let temples survive here, despite that, if our Dasara continues to thrive, there is some amount of resilience that we need to give ourselves credit for, even as we also talk about the social evils. I'm not saying there's a very thin line between jingoism and feeling genuinely proud about what you have done. I think till now, the historiography has always stressed only on this feeling of feeling inferior. And I think unless you have that genuine sense of, self-confidence and self-respect, you may become the third largest economy, $5 trillion, you may have the nuclear bomb, you may have many, many other things. Militarily, you may be strong, you may be part of the Quad, but the hardware is there. But the software is what history gives us, that sense of identity, to identify ourselves of who we are as a nation, as a people, as a civilization, understand our faults, understand the mistakes, try not to repeat them, but also build on the strengths and feel the genuine sense of pride. You need to have a grand Indian narrative.
Yeah,
that is missing, unfortunately, and sadly so after independence.
Why is it missing? But that's one point. Secondly, when he said third largest economy, how many of you thought, but our per capita is just $2,500 per head, so we are not yet doing so well as per capita? How many of you thought that? That's what made you feel, you're great. Nah, but you still haven't done this. This is something which is ingrained in our head. Tell me one another nation which has the density of population vis-a-vis percentage of landmass that is the third largest economy in the world. Can anybody else but Bharat do it? With 4% of the landmass and 20% of the world's population. We're doing it. So should we take pride in it, or should we think, no, I don't think we're good enough? See, please realize, ladies and gentlemen, why what people like Vikram are doing is important. It's important because we've been conditioned over not one generation. We've been conditioned over 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 generations to feel subservient at all times. And touch your heart and tell me you still don't do it. It comes as second nature. Touch your heart and tell me that you don't think that when there's a white person in the room, you're supposed to stand up and give that person a little more attention. A non-Indian in the room. Why? Why? And if you're doing it, how is it and why is it that we're doing it? That again goes back to this entire aspect of how the story of Suhail Dev. I know I'm quoting another author, but he's a good friend. But many people are writing, when you wrote Brave Hearts of Bharat, the kings of Jammu and Kashmir, the kings of today's Gujarat, kings here, the kingdoms, the Marathas, and of course further down, there was resistance all around. And there was a reason why. How many of us know that something kept us all together, isn't it? We were all multiple riyasats, multiple princely states, and were they fighting on religious grounds, or were they fighting politically just to expand their samrajya? What was the story there? And where do you think we need to start?
Yeah. So that ties into what I was saying earlier, Anand, about we not being a nation. So there's a difference, I think, between a nation and a nation state. A nation state is defined by regular borders, boundaries, politics, by codified laws and so on, and that keeps changing all the time. Borders change. What India was in 1946 is not what it is now, with 3 lines drawn across the subcontinent. what Andhra Pradesh was 15 years ago, it's different today. So borders change.
Madhya Pradesh isn't the same.
Madhya
Uttar
Pradesh
Pradesh
and
isn't the
Uttar
same. No
Pradesh
state.
and all.
Yeah.
So borders can change, but a nation is defined by something more, I think, intangible, and that is the common sense of emotional connect, a civilizational unity, and in that there has been an amazing similarity.
How did Hyun Sang describe
the centuries? Like, the famous quote of, the Vishnu Puran, which goes of Uttaram yat samudrasya himadraschaiva dakshinam varshatad bharatam nama bharati yatra santati. This is of the 6th century, 9th century, some say something in the BC, which says the entire landmass north of the oceans and south of the Himalayas, this sacred geography, Varsha tad bharatam. Bharata is the name of this country, Varsha, and its children are called Bharatiyas. So there was a very, very clear enunciation of, what this civilizationally we were one. So when our ancestors went on pilgrimages to Badrinath and Kedarnath and all these places, going by foot, through different riyasats, through politically different provinces, nobody stopped them and said, you're a foreigner, don't enter, we will kill you. When Adi Shankaracharya went all the way from Kerala and literally circumscribed the country, why did he have to choose 4 cardinal points? He could have just stayed in Kalladi, the small little village in Kerala, 30 plus whatever years he lived. He could have done all his work there. But the very fact that he geographically marked the entire sacred geography, South, Sringeri, Puri on the east, Badrinath and Dwarka, said that this is the expanse of the sacred geography. So civilizationally, I think we have somewhere been one. Politically, things will keep changing. Europe was not the same as it was. Every country, politically, borders, laws, people, that will change. But what is the common connect that brings us all together? So when Rani Ahilyabai Holkar in the 18th century, she resurrects all the temples, the 12 Jyotirlingas, all the 7 Puris, the Char Dhams, bringing water from the Ganga to South Indian temples in Rameshwaram and every other place here, there was some kind of commonality that existed. I think that is important to dwell upon. But I would again urge that, it's a slippery slope. It is a slippery slope that between excessive chest thumping, because the counter to the ideological distortion cannot be another ideological distortion, where we say everything about our past was so great, we knew about the nuclear bomb, we knew about the internet, we knew about... That is another
but
loony...
to get to a balance, when you swung the pendulum all the way this way, you will have to swing it back a little before it comes to a place where we have, let's say, as you would want to put it, a balanced awareness of what we did right and what we did wrong.
Correct. And so, unfortunately, I think the counter to the distortion tends to be this, and that is why it is never taken seriously. The
5th century AD is more than 2,000 years ago, isn't it?
No, true.
Nearly 2,000 years. In 5th century AD, if somebody is in the Vishnu Puran, I am saying, for argument's sake, that it's not in BC, it's 5th century AD. For argument's sake. 2,000 years ago, somebody had given a construct of who we are geographically and bound us together. Shankaracharya was around the same time. Where are the Jyotirlingas? A lot of you must be very erudite people in the audience. You would know. Think about where are the Jyotirlingas, Shiva's Jyotirlingas. Where are they spread across our country? The Shakti Pithas. Why are they spread all across our country? Is there a science? Have we spoken about the science behind why these spots have been chosen? Why 16 times Somnath has been attacked? Now, is it wrong for somebody? Oh, Somnath was smashed 16 times. You're losers. See, Nalanda, burnt. Even today, that station is called Bakhtiyarpur, named after the person who burnt it, Bakhtiyar Khilji. And we are okay about it. So, why? Is it wrong to question all of this and perhaps say, correct these notions, saying that we should not be okay about it?
So, yeah, that is, of course, a yes to that, very emphatically. That really becomes a no-brainer. But the whole idea for that, I would emphasize, needs to have scholarship, needs to have a certain element of intellectual input. It can't be a lot of, kite flying, if I can use, which is unfortunately what the counter to a lot of the Marxist propaganda and ideologically driven history has become. And that is where I'd like to bring back the discussion to the foundation,
Yeah.
what we plan to do through that. Another problem that we face, and this is unique, I think, in India, and I'd like to address and draw the attention of all of you to that this is probably the only country in the whole world where you can be an expert of a certain era of our history without even knowing the languages that were spoken then or the texts that were written in that particular language. So you can be an expert of ancient India in this country and proudly say, I don't know a word of Sanskrit, I don't know Pali, I don't know Prakrit, I don't know Sen Tamil, I don't know any of the classical languages. You can be a internationally renowned historian of medieval India and say, I don't know Persian and Arabic. I'm not naming any historians. I'm sure you all know whom I'm talking about. They have come out openly and said that I don't know. So what do you rely then on? You rely on Western translations of our texts, right? And there is just that much that, a translation, it's literally lost in translation. And
No.
and
Western translations are very good, Vikram Sampath. 33 koti is 33 crores.
So, I'll just give you one example, Anand, and this was a revelation for me in the last couple of weeks. I must mention here that I'm currently working on a book on the history of the Kashi Vishwanath temple and the Gyanvapi, the entire dispute. And in the process of that, and also seeing the history, the legal papers, the contestation that happened right from 1810, constantly the thing is, the Shivalinga is derided as the male organ, right? I mean, that's how your phallus.
Yeah, it's a phallic symbol. That's
symbol,
another way
phallus
of describing
worship.
the Shivalinga.
Yes.
And a lot of people will think, oh, really? Is that true?
So, in the process of writing this, I also wanted some clarity even for myself. That am I actually
Kindly
worshipping
provide.
a phallus? And so I had the great fortune of having long interactions with the Kudli Sringeri Shankaracharya, the latest Shankaracharya, who is a great scholar of Sanskrit, Sri Abhinav Shankar Bharti. And he, just to give you an illustration of this word linga in Sanskrit, it says the original etymology of the word says it is a sign which gives meaning to many other things. That is lingati anena iti lingam. It gives meaning to other things. And he quoted me about 4 or 5 instances where in the Mahabharata, in the Shanti Parva, it is said that the linga can be used as a geographical marker. So, if in Karnataka, you have the sandalwood, abounding. So sandalwood is the linga or the signifier of Karnataka, Chandan. So this is the land of that. So their linga is used in the Mahabharata in that context. In another context, in the same Mahabharata, you are using linga as a means to understand subtle characteristics of the world, not necessarily the gross characteristics. The Manusmriti has 2 interpretations of the word linga. One which says, it signifies the education level of a person. Another interpretation of the linga is the physical, religious symbols one puts, the tilak or the vibhuti or something. Yeah. That is also called the linga. Now, esoterically, the linga is seen as a coming together of Shiva and Shakti. The linga represents, again, signifies, it's a marker to something else of the male form, but it is held in a Vedi, which is the female form. And in 2D, if you see, you have the Ardhanarishwara, where the woman, so the larger concept saying each one of us has a masculine part of us, a feminine part of us, and unless the yin and yang come into balance, then, the life is not complete. So in 2D, you're shown as Ardhanarishwara. The same in 3D is shown in the form of a linga. Another interpretation through some Linga Purana and this and that says linga is also a symbol of the Trinity. At the base is Brahma, at the middle there is Vishnu, at the top there is Shiva. So one word, so many interpretations. Now imagine a German person, looking at this without any root in our tradition or any understanding of what this means. He'll say, yeah, this is a phallus, linga. So one of the meanings of linga is also, it's a marker of the gender of the person. Again, marker, it's a signifier. It doesn't necessarily mean the actual, genital organ. So if you look at it literally and take it at face value, a totally different, meaning
Technically,
comes.
what is supposed to be here sits Shiva. This is the presence. This is where Shiva is. So that is why it is the Shiva Lingam. Yeah. So simply put, this is where Shiva as the deity presides. And that is because he's formless and whatever is the story behind that. But you don't attach a form, so you're putting a stone and you're saying this is where Shiva presides. So that now has become
as Sir mentioned in his question, that there are so many manuscripts in the Oriental Research Institute in Mysore. All over the country, there are millions. The National Manuscript Mission, we have about 3 million, 4 million manuscripts which are dying to be digitized and translated. Now, who's going to do that? So the idea for this foundation is also now me as a modern historian, for me just to understand this concept of what the linga is, and I think this is just 1% of the true significance. It took me 2-3 weeks and my brain was spinning. Now for me to understand and master Vedic Sanskrit, then also Pali, then also Prakrit, then also there's so many different languages, it would take me a couple of lifetimes, and I'm not going to achieve that. I did not,
What's your IQ to be able to do it even in a couple of lifetimes? So this is going to take much more than that.
So I'm trained in historiographical research, so I'd rather stick to my competency. So through the foundation, what I thought would make sense is to form small multidisciplinary groups where a modern historian comes together with a Sanskrit Pandit, a Prakrit scholar, a Pali scholar, whatever, Sen Tamil scholar of the Silapadikaram age, a geologist, an archaeologist, a geneticist. Yeah. When we talk of Aryan invasion, so-called mythical Aryan invasion theory, or you talk of the caste system, was there endogamy, was there upward mobility, was there intercaste marriages, a geneticist's role becomes so important. But a historian has never spoken with an archaeologist too. And Sanskrit Pandits will sit and only use their Sanskrit knowledge for karmakandas, for pujas and this and that. But they will not use their Sanskrit expertise for historical research. Because we as a nation don't think historical research matters too much. So through this, what I'm trying to do in a very small way is to push that pendulum which you said had swung to one extent. The only answer to distortion is scholarship. The only answer to all kinds of negative propaganda cannot be further negative propaganda or another kind of propaganda. It has to be rooted in scholarship. So if the primary sources say a certain thing, then you're quoting that, you're taking subject matter experts of that particular text, talking to you about it, and then we all come to a consensus, and then the hypothesis is brought together, and that is disseminated through various ways, through books, through social media and all that. The dissemination part is secondary.
In fact, more importantly, is academic papers part of?
Yes, that too.
Because these days, academia also need a certain level of...
True. So one of the...
Given what is happening recently.
So for instance, I've just... we are signing up with numerous universities in different parts of India. We just signed up with the Nalanda University, which has been resurrected on the ruins of the Nalanda that you mentioned, where there is a large group of Buddhist scholars who know Pali, Prakrit, Tibetan, monks who come from there, from Indochina region and all of that. Now, if we want, every time there is talk of Islamic conquest and what it did to our civilization, the immediate Marxist response is, but the Hindus also persecuted the Buddhists. But is that statement rooted in any kind of facts? What do the primary texts say? Were they individual acts of persecution by few kings, or was there a theological sanction to that? What do the primary texts in Prakrit, in Tibetan, in Sanskrit say about it? And how will we know that unless we get all these people together in a room, get them to discuss this, investigate, almost like an investigative journalist, go over all these documents and texts, and whatever if it says, yes, we were persecuting people, you should tell it in the way it is. You said itihasa it does happened. If it happened like that, please tell it the way it was.
Say it as it
Don't make it another distorted propaganda of some right wing, left wing, this wing, that wing. Let it be a centrist wing which talks about a decolonized, a true aspect of of our history seen from our own eyes, seen through our own scholars, investigating our own scripts and texts, and not something we have outsourced to the Western scholars. Even today, Wendy Doniger and all these other people
They're attacking
are the ones
Bhandarkar
who are
Institute, no?
telling us what our religion, our faiths are, because nobody here has bothered to do that. We don't have Indology departments in Indian universities. We don't have civilizational studies. We don't have departments for study of faiths, comparative studies of faiths in India. So obviously someone else is going to take up the matter. So what is the counter to that? Is it just social media on Twitter? Are you going to fight with them? Is it going to be through politics, through political parties? I don't think it comes on the agenda of any political party or government. And
No,
I'm glad it doesn't.
it has to be scholarship. And since you're working with the scholars in Nalanda, please find out for me as a small request whether Ashok had converted to Buddhism before he waged war with the Kalinga, or he turned to Buddhism after he had massacred
He
all of
already
them.
had 4 years before the Kalinga War. So yeah.
Now, another thing which is not written in our history books, and we are asked to perceive things differently. How old was Ekalavya when he went to Dronacharya? Another aspect of Mahabharata which is again distorted. Was Dronacharya casteist, or did he really take, what was the reason behind what happened? How was Ekalavya ever related to Krishna? That's another story which is again there in the Mahabharata. So these are all parts which are now coming to the fore. If we are reading more often, we are perhaps a little more aware. But this is not going to be easy. How are you going to pick and choose your subjects? Are you going to pick and choose your subjects based on who commissions the work from you? Or are you going to go and look at, say, let's try and create endowments for certain work, and then this is what I want to do and I need somebody to back me?
True. So both of those, Anand. So one part is, of course, certain projects and themes which are personally I'm quite passionate about. One is the Hindu-Buddhist relationship. I also want to investigate the growth of the caste system as it is known today. What has been the trajectory of that?
Casta is a Portuguese word.
Yeah.
So the Varna system is what you're
Right,
saying, and the
right.
evolution of how it happened.
For common parlance. And the Dravidian movement, let's see where the roots of that were. Was it in separatist 18th century missionary accounts, which later moved into? So there are certain things which I am personally passionate about, which I would like to work on. Before I lose my train of thought, I'll complete it. The other set of things which I'd like to do is by giving scholarships and fellowships to individuals, which will be announced nationwide. About 5 or 6 or 7 scholars, depending on what the quality of the input is, and they can choose the topic that they would want to do. They'll be given a substantial amount of money for a period of 1 year, during which they can work on their themes. And the ask is, at the end of it, you need to come up with a publish-worthy manuscript, which can then be routed to mainstream.
So who mentors them? You will mentor them?
Yeah,
Will there be a
few
team?
others.
Is there a group of people?
We have a set of advisors who we've set up with university professors and even outside India. Probably get a journal out also on Indian history, which has never happened, an EPW equivalent of Indian history. So that revival has to happen that way. I agree that it's a very difficult task, and I really don't know what I'm setting myself against. But then if you keep on, on social media, you say, let's ban Romila Thapar's books. Let's, take away Irfan Habib's books, R.S. Sharma, D.N. Jha. You keep demonizing these people for what they have done. But fine, ban it. What are you going to replace it with?
Correct.
Where is the alternative that is written, and who is writing it? Fighting every day on social media is not going to, finally you may do all that and you may score some brownie points on television. Your TRPs may go, you may,
Frankly,
your channel might
it's
become
okay to
free.
take those jibes at me, but you really think, Vikram, I've done more work for TRP or more work for trying to get a certain level of awareness on Bharat? So, because a lot of times these conversations are not had. Nobody is asking for banning them, but they have to be aggressively countered. And I totally agree. But no, I totally agree with you when you say that it has to be countered with facts, with scholarly work. And somewhere what you started to do or what you've set out to do needs to be done at an accelerated pace. We are not looking at, I hope we all appreciate the gap that we need to cover. It's nearly a century's worth of brainwash, if not more, which needs to be addressed in the next, say, 10 to 15 years. That means on a yearly basis, we need to have 10 or 12 such scholarly papers which challenge a gamut of aspects, starting with science, architecture. There is so much of our Bharatiya knowledge system and Bharatiya scriptural aspects, which a very, very learned person once told me that most of our scriptures, really 95% of it is actually science, is steeped in science and spiritualism, and only about 5 to 6% of it, give or take 1 more percent, 2 more percent, is actually theology or very deeply religious instruction. So if there is 95% of this work and it spreads, that itself is challenged. So there is so much work that needs to be done. What are you expecting from who's watching us today or who's here today?
Well,
Can they come out and support you?
of course. I mean, as I said, support of all kinds is what an initiative like this
First,
would
start
try.
by reading his work.
No, that of course, I mean, that's fine. It depends. Everyone need not be interested in
Because you can
history, but-
publish as many books and papers you
True.
want, Vikram, but unless people are reading and then they are passing on that knowledge to the next generation,
No, but
it's
I-
going to be once again.
I have a lot of hope, Anand, at
adorning
least
books.
in the younger generation.
Are
I think
people reading?
They are reading immensely. We underestimate them and we feel condescending and say, oh, the young are not reading. Of course, a lot of them are also indulging in, there's so much of information explosion and so much of social media intrusion in our lives, but people are still reading. When I see the fact that those 2 Savarkar volumes, which seem very daunting, the fact that they sold over 1 lakh copies among them was not something that I ever expected. Similarly, I see what Sai Deepak, my other good friend and fellow author, has written. That's also sold several lakhs of copies. So people, I don't know if people are just buying it and stocking it in their house and it's gathering dust, but at least, people are probably getting aware. Waking someone from slumber was the bigger task. The first task is somehow slightly achieved. Now the next step, we are always slow people. We'll go.
Well, confession mode. I got the second part of his book first, and then I got the first part of the book. But I read 30 pages of the first part of the second part, and I couldn't sleep all night because I was shocked. I was shocked beyond belief of what he had written in Savarkar. The point of there's so much information, ladies and gentlemen, and then. The next day I went back and picked up that book and read another 30 pages and I couldn't sleep another night. And I was like, dude, what have I been thinking all this while? What have I been conditioned to or have been fed? And what he's done is scholarly work. And that's the reason why the early part was to challenge him a bit. It was not just that I'm going out there with an agenda to, cancel somebody out. That's not his agenda. And that's where the respect for Vikram's work grew for me. Because when I read Savarkar and even Goharjan, a lot of it was commentary. It was not, and based on a lot of research which is there, and there is reference. In fact, some of it I went back and cross-checked myself, just to see if he's true to his word. So we got to do our due diligence. So we did that. So I did that, just certain pages, certain parts. And a lot of what he has done is there in Marathi literature. The beauty of our country is the fact that there is so much of linguistic literature, literary work which is there, which we don't know. English speaking, Hindi speaking, who don't know what work is there in Sanskritam, what is there in Tamil, like he was saying, what's there in Kannada, what's there in Marathi. And if all of that has to be studied, imagine all of us, if we take one project as part of his foundation and say, we will do it, and if all of us decide to fund the other person's project, we still will not be able to complete in our lifetimes the kind of knowledge systems which is there for us to dive into. So, let me ask you this. 3 or 4 subjects that you really want to dive into immediately, which you think you need immediate support and you want to start, which are there, the low-hanging fruit, ready for the picking.
None of the fruits are low-hanging. Everything is very high up there. And I think one needs to have a ladder, several ladders to reach that fruit. The Hindu-Buddhist project is something that we've actually kickstarted, and maybe from 2024, first quarter, is when we probably start off. We're still putting together the team, and it's very fascinating to have Mr. K.K. Mohammed is one of our advisors, one of the leading archaeologists of the country, who's also helped me connect with some of the young archaeologists. I don't know how often we've had geologists, archaeologists, historians, Sanskrit typical Sanskrit Pandit from a Gurukulam sitting together and working on something. I'm quite eager to see what will come out of it. It's an experiment, and I hope if it succeeds, it can be scaled up to several notches. And I think that is the I can't reinforce enough or underscore enough that scholarship is the only answer. And we know all of us have these complaints. The government is not doing much. The government is not changing textbooks even after 10 years, which is legitimate. But while they do what they do, they also are not taking it seriously because they don't think it is a matter of priority for anybody. Unless and until a lot of us, civil society, say this is not just a discipline which our sons and daughters and grandchildren are just going to memorize, vomit in the exam and forget all about it. It is much more than that. It is something that connects us to our roots. It gives us a sense of identity, where we came from and where we will go. And we would expect you to do the right thing. Otherwise, you don't get our vote. I think the politicians will understand only that language.
True.
But till they do that, I think it's up to civil society. It's up to people like us, people like all of us, who can contribute in numerous ways. Everyone cannot start doing a research. Some can contribute through some other ways, in kind, in cash, in other ways. You are such a great amplifier through, despite my friendly jibes, nothing against.
Not at all. You're most welcome. That's what makes it fun.
We can't survive without the media, the social media, all of this. The arms of dissemination then become. So we entice you said a lot of people don't read. Yeah, maybe a 1,000-page book or even this Mysore book may seem very daunting. But if you cull out small nuggets out of it, someone helps making interesting Instagram reels. Now, nobody can say information can't be processed and presented in multiple interesting ways. And as a teaser, as a trailer for the youngster, saying, this is what it is. Did you know this? Did you know that? And then slowly draw them into the habit of reading. That curiosity is arisen in their minds. And that's how slowly, I think, at least I'm thinking for the next 50, 60, 100 years, when I'm dead and gone for sure, but at least, the base has been set on which others can probably build on it and do something rather than constantly complain. I think we as a nation have become a nation of complainers, people saying nothing is working, this is not working. I think Gandhi's thought there, I agree with, be the change that you want to see. So in a very, very small baby step, I hope, many more people join hands and it becomes a larger movement to resurrect India's rich history, as this title, this session has been.
Yeah, resurrect and recorrect somewhere. I keep believing that distortion is to a level that it needs to be sorted out. Neeraj Attri, another author, ladies and gentlemen, a teacher, since we are being very generous about author literary work, he's written a book called The Brainwashed Republic. It's a small book, but it's an eye-opener. So that can be a stepping stone. And he's a teacher too. So he's teaching science. And he's teaching kids to go to the Olympiad. And he says, Bharatiya students are fantastic when it comes to science, chemistry, maths, any of the subjects, academic subjects. You know where we fail, our children fail, when it comes to the culture aspect of it. We are hollow because we are left stumped to even describe who we are as a nation, as a people, as an entity, as Bharatiya. The Japanese, clear about it. The British, very distorted version of how great they were. All the massacres, all the looting, plundering they've done, none of it is taught to them. But they've taught that they're great. But some have clarity. The Russians have clarity. The Americans have clarity. Distorted or not, but they have clarity. And they believe in something that talks themselves as great. As gives them the confidence about and pride about who they are. Bharatiya students have a problem here. And that should concern all of us. That should concern all of us. And that's why what he's doing is phenomenal. So, well done, Vikram. All the best to you.
Thank you.
Questions? Do we have time? Yeah, we throw it open to anybody and everybody.
I think we have a question here in the center. Oh, wow, there are many.
Hi, Hi, I'm Purushottam Adiga here. One of the best political editor is there, and the person whom I follow on Twitter just saw in the morning your tweet showcasing the photo that your fingers were painting after signing so many books.
Finger comma, he said. Finger comma.
The two questions. One regarding the previous session. How did that the Wadiyar, that whole dynasty survived during the Vijayanagara Empire? One. And the second thing, if you could throw some light on the issue which is brewing since yesterday on our giant Veer Savarkar. Hope you are aware of that. Of course. Thank you.
Please. On the first part, thank you for your question. And on the first part, it was a very difficult, 40 odd years for the Wadiyar family. But there too, there was a difference in the approach of both Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan towards this dynasty. And that's where I would rate Hyder as a better statesman. And His Highness, and we were talking about this before coming here, that Hyder understood that in a Hindu majority kingdom, to completely delegitimize a traditional dynasty that had ruled for, by then, almost 400 years, would be suicidal for him. So he kept the Wadiyar a puppet ruler on the throne, but all the trophies of war would be submitted to his feet. All the orders would go in his name, almost like the President of India, who's just a titular kind of a person, not actively involved, but he was a Sarvadhikari, or the supreme dictator. He still maintained the Wadiyar, but there too, he would nominate his own, small children, 3-year, 4-year-old infants would be put on the throne. And the minute they would start, getting a mind of their own, or start thinking that, I need to assert my independence, or they would become of an age when they could father, children, mysteriously they would all be poisoned to death. They would not wake up in the morning. And then the succession would go on again like this. And that's why the Wadiyar dynasty has this crisscross genealogy of adoption, cross-adoptions from the larger collateral family line. Because, before they could have a child, this fellow has been poisoned. So in that very dire circumstances is how the Wadiyar family survived. And again, I re-emphasize the role of Maharani Lakshmi Ammanni, who under Tipu, she was put under house arrest. She could literally not even go out of the small Natakashala that she was put in Nazarabad, and nowhere go outside that. So he did not follow, Tipu Sultan did not follow the same principle that Hyder did, that, let's allow the Wadiyar. He said, why have a puppet king? So he became the supreme sultan of the kingdom, and Mysore itself became Sultanate Khudadad, or the God-given kingdom. Everything Persianized, Kannada replaced by Persian as the court language. All the cities renamed to Persian language. And literally, a very a kind of megalomania, which said he was desperate for validation and acceptance that he is a legitimate ruler. So if a bridge has been built by the irrigation canal, or something that's been built centuries ago by one of the enlightened rulers of the past, demolish that and in its place build another bridge, but put his name to it. Almost all of old Mysore city was demolished, all the old buildings demolished, so much so that after his death, when Mummadi Krishnaraj Wadiyar was coronated, there was not a single building worth its salt for the coronation also to happen. So that was a level of destruction. But in this thraldom that she was placed in, she was constantly sending emissaries to different parts, to the Peshwa court, to the British in Madras, all of them asking for support. And one of the families which also helped her in doing this was of the Mandya Mayangars. The Mandya Mayangars, Tirumal Rao and Narayan Rao, the two brothers who carried her, they were literally beaten black and blue by Tipu Sultan. They would escape from him, go to Madras, confer with all the British governors and all of that to try and have a treaty. So much so that when he could not catch them, that is one reason why 600 families of Mandya Mayangars were actually ruthlessly killed on Naraka Chaturdashi in the Lakshmi Narasimha temple in Srirangapatna. They were invited for a feast and then, like Jallianwala Bagh, the doors closed and elephants left to trample them all to death. And to this day, the Mandya Mayengar community of the Bharadwaj Gotra, who were all massacred during that time, do not celebrate Diwali while the rest of the country does. They do it, I think, a few days later. So these oral histories are also as important. And it was under such very, very difficult circumstances that the Wadiyar family somehow lingered on. Lakshmi Ammanni kept her resolve and managed to ensure that the kingdom got back to her family after the death of Tipu. That was the first question. The second one, of course, was on Veer Savarkar. I know that his name gets dragged into all kinds of ugly politics, which is so unnecessary. I think there should be a moratorium on... there should be a moratorium on all kinds of maligning. And I say this for everybody. I mean, even the so-called, right wing, which constantly also calumnizes Nehru and everyone. I think we should stop that somewhere. These were all in their own ways. They were patriots who contributed to the freedom struggle in varied capacities and various ways. So today, for petty politics to draw them, these historical figures, and to malign their legacy is extremely unfortunate. Savarkar was someone who started India's first ever organized secret society, the Mitra Mela, which later became Abhinav Bharat. Someone who had the first ever student bonfire of foreign clothes in the Ferguson College. Someone who lit the fire of revolution in the 5 years that he was in London as a student, where with several other luminaries, Shyamji Krishnavarma, Madam Bhikaji Kama, Virendranath Chattopadhyay, Madan Lal Dhingra, Lala Hardayal, all of these people were operating out of Paris, of London, everywhere, in 1905 to 1910, looking for complete freedom for India, at a time when even the then Congress party was only asking for small concessions and not total freedom. He was someone who made, who recoined the Sepoy Mutiny, which was looked at disparagingly as the first war of Indian independence. While in London, he used the British archives, used history written from an Indian perspective, and said this was not just a random incident of a few sepoys going on a rampage because there was beef lard or pork lard, but there was a deep, Swarajya and Swadharma. That is why the two communities, otherwise at odds, came together to fight the common enemy, and that needs to be the basis for revolution. And his book, the intellectual corpus that he gave to the revolutionary movement, it carried on for several decades even after he wrote that book. It was translated by Bhagat Singh. The third edition was printed by Bhagat Singh and the HSRA. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Rash Bihari Bose, they got these translated for the INA soldiers, the Indian National Army soldiers. They were copies of the 1857 book which were found in the INA raids in different parts. Right from Japanese to Tamil, it was translated in all kinds of languages. It was almost like the Bhagavad Gita for revolutionaries. You have to read that to become a revolutionary person. And of course, for that crime, the kind of inhuman tortures that he faced for 12 long years in Kalapani, in Port Blair, that should become a place of pilgrimage not only for Savarkar but for the hundreds of other revolutionaries who were there and under the most inhuman conditions. Common facilities of good food not given to you, rotten food with pieces of reptiles, eating which you will end up with diarrhea. There is fixed time to go to the toilets. So if you cannot, control yourself, you end up defecating and urinating in your own small cell. So living, eating, sleeping amidst your own squalor for months on end, standing handcuffs, and that kolhu ka bail punishment, where you have the oil grounding mill, where instead of the bull that is yoked at the end of it, the freedom fighter was put there, and in the blazing heat of Port Blair to go round and round that and extract 30 pounds of oil. And at the end of the day, it is measured. If it is not 30 pounds, you are whiplashed, you are not given food, you are not given medical facilities. So many of those revolutionaries who were lodged there either committed suicide or they went senile because they could not, bear that torture. But today, if we ask amongst ourselves, can we name 5 revolutionaries who suffered this way at Kalapani? I don't know if any one of us can do that. I don't know if any of our children can do that. And what sort of an ungrateful nation can we be, where if we do not know this, that these were the people who sacrificed their last blood of their body in that kind of circumstance. Few months of isolation during lockdown and we were all bonkers. And when we had our luxuries of our home, their solitary confinement for months on end, Savarkar's cell opened to the place where people were hanged, and every day you're looking at someone screaming and shouting to be hanged to death. What should happen to a person's spirit and the zeal to continue to fight or have that desire for freedom? Today, some politician, some dynast whose whole claim to fame is the surname or somebody's so-and-so son, grandson, very easily you can sit in a AC room and disparage all of that and say, this one is a traitor. Who are you to give certificates of patriotism to any of these people? Savarkar too. Not only... Savarkar was, of course, he suffered. But very seldom we talk about his whole family that suffered along with him. His elder brother, Baba Rao, he was in the same Kalapani for almost the same 12, 13 years. And the women of the family, Savarkar's wife and his elder brother's wife, the entire society had, ostracized them. They were living outside. The government had confiscated even the utensils of the house. They came from a zamindari family. The entire property was taken over. Even his spectacles was taken away. The Bhagavad Gita that he had, that was taken away. The family didn't have even provisions to cook. They had to literally resort to beggary to survive. And Madam Bhikaji Kama, that famous, Parsi woman from Bombay who went to Paris and set up the whole revolutionary movement there, she used to send money from Paris for the upkeep of this Savarkar family. So, and all his degrees were snatched. He was from Ferguson, he had his bachelor's degree. He had his master's degree from the Gray's Inn, where he trained to be a lawyer in London. All those degrees were taken away from him. He did not have the option to, pursue his law degree, though he was a trained lawyer, even after coming out of, prison. So for somebody and for the entire family who has suffered so very much, so easy it is for us to sit today and make all these crazy remarks. I don't want his photo to be in the assembly. Who are you to make such comments?
See,
what
they
is
get
your
away,
contribution to this whole
True, and they get away with these comments because we don't know. If you have Savarkar in your library, in your home, and you teach it to your family and you know, then bust or no bust, Savarkar will always remain. See,
His Highness said, the bust can be there. One may give him Bharat Ratna, one may not give him Bharat Ratna. That is irrespective and immaterial. But nobody can take away his contribution. Nobody can wipe away, his legacy that way.
Correct. So, see, for so many centuries, Adi Vishwanath and Kashis are surrounded by a structure where you can't see. But have we stopped believing in Kashi Vishwanath? It's the belief that keeps Kashi Vishwanath alive, right? So it's the same way. It's the knowledge, it's knowing, it's the belief that will keep Savarkar and the legacy of those freedom fighters alive. Just the same way that we should know that Bhagat Singh was not a communist. He read Karl Marx, but he read the Bhagavad Gita and he read Savarkar also. We read all sorts of books. Does that make us... So this whole narrative was also peddled by somebody from the South who wrote an article many years after his death. Anilesh Mahajan from India Today, my peer, has done huge amount of research on it, and it's there, out there in public domain, that Bhagat Singh was an Arya Samaji. He came from an Arya Samaji family. He was not a communist. So this whole narrative was written by E.V. Ramaswamy Nayakar in a Tamil thing, and then got interpreted into, translated. Now every time everybody says, why I am an atheist, he was never an atheist. He was an Arya Samaji. His last letter to his brother said, Baki jo Rab di marzi. That's how it was signed. So if he was an atheist, why would he say Rab di marzi? Rab is God, right? So these are all aspects of our history which get distorted. And that's why I said swinging the pendulum one to the other. That's why we need to swing it back a little before we get the balance and we get our facts right, our itihasa as it happened right, from recent to real past. Yes, sir, sorry.
Thanks. Question, Vikramji. two parts. First, to what extent have all sources been exploited to write history? For instance, I know that the Sultanate era history is significantly written by the court chronicler perspective. So if any alternative history, let's say, is maintained by the Rajputs of the same era, to what extent that has been leveraged, and like that, so on and so forth. See, Karnataka history is significantly written by leveraging the stone inscriptions, but that's not so. There are several stone inscriptions elsewhere that's not well leveraged. Point number one. Point number two is you spoke of Marxist historiography. Definitely an ideology, a lens has translated itself into an academic methodology, and they've done it superbly. To what extent can we leverage our own philosophies, the Itihasa tradition, to form a lens which then becomes an academic machinery? Otherwise, it's going to be a tedious collection of facts, and you can't draw a narrative, you can't productionize that as an equivalent to the Marxist historiography.
Very true, sir. I think the Indic narrative of how to look at the Pratyaksha and the Pramana. If you look at all our schools of philosophy, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, all of that, I mean, what is our model of knowledge production? I think that is the first step, according to me, to understand how we look at the hypothesis and the proving it. The Marxist philosophy relies on the dialectic. You have the thesis always clashing with the antithesis, and the synthesis comes forth. And always there is a clash between ideas, between history seen as class struggle, and out of that, so anarchy, violence is not seen as something bad. So out of that, something emerges. So whether it is, Hegel, whether it is Marx or Gramsci or whoever, the critical theory, the critical race theory, all these theories that came about are all rooted in that. I think the answer to that has to be scholarly. And the answer to that has to be rooted in the Bharatiya traditions, which we have ample of it. We need people who are well-versed in these philosophical schools to say, how do we address a particular hypothesis? How do we look at Pratyaksha and Pramana? How do we prove something? Is it just on the basis of hearsay? How do we, triangulate facts? How do we look at multiple sources? That certainly needs to be the first step, an Indian model for, knowledge creation and production, and thereafter build on it. All sources have certainly not been used, and even the sources that are there, they are so compromised and so used in a very, very, in a fashion that, suits you. One example I can give you is of, how the Marxist distortion happens. Constantly we are told that, when Muhammad Ghazni goes to Somnath, it is not, religious considerations that drove him there. The typical, the oppressive Brahmin who was looting everyone, all the wealth was there. So it was only for wealth purpose Ghazni went there and he demolished the temple. It was nothing to do with theological sanction. But if you look at the primary sources again, you go to Al-Baruni, you go to Farishta, you go to Minhaj-e-Siraj, and there are first-person accounts of what happened then. So first of all, Muhammad Ghazni goes to Somnath. There are 50,000 common Hindus who are trying to defend that temple. The Chalukya ruler also has run away from Patan. So the common Hindus are fighting with him for 3 days. He kills all of them and then storms into the Garbhagriha. And then all the pujaris come running there and say, you are a lutera, you want money, right? So I will give you as much money as you want. Just, save our deity and go away. Now he is supposed to, and this is noted by his own court chroniclers, who say Mahmud laughs and says, if I do that, I will be termed as a trader of idols. I want my legacy to stay as a Butchikan or a breaker of idols. So I don't want your money, I want to break this idol. And of course, then it was uprooted, broken, made into, pieces, and then taken and kept on the steps of the masjids back in Ghazni, so that every time people stepped on it, the religion of the infidel comes down. So this is what the court chronicler is telling, straight from the horse's mouth. Now that also you want to give another, no, but we have to see it in context. We saw the testimonies of all the presidents of the great Ivy League universities of the US. No, everything has a context. It can't be taken at face value. But Hare Baba, here they are taking pride in saying, I want to be a butch chicken. So what is this context that we are searching for? So I think there is sources are not used, and what sources are used are again distorted. So that too needs to be.
Can we carry on for 5 more minutes? Are you all getting bored or are you all right? No, you are saying yes. We got to ask them. We got to ask them. So this word Buddh itself derives itself from Buddha. Because, and that's why the desecration of the Bamiyan Buddhas. And Amish has written about idols. That's his latest book, Amish Tripathi, another author, who's written about idols and is a fantastic, I'm still reading it. But there is again history there, that it was not just with Bharat and Murti Puja here. Across the world, pagan civilizations. And there were Abrahamic doctrines which said that you got to destroy them. So
the only pagan system which is still surviving.
Yeah, and it's the pagan system which is still surviving, if you were to see. So even it started with the Christians, and the Pan-Islamists or Islam followed it. And the word butch chicken itself, you can...
There also, no, Anand, I mean, the very fact that you can't even talk about all this, you do not even acknowledge this, and I've said this several times. This is under the wrong, post-independent. I understand where the, founding fathers and mothers of this country thought that, we'd just come out of partition, the scourges of that, which was based on religion. So let's not create further divisions in society and all of that. So in the process, let us put all these uncomfortable truths under the carpet. And that there is a fundamental flaw in that, where you almost hold communities today responsible for the excesses of the past. Time and time again, I keep saying that a young, Muslim man or woman today is not responsible for what Ghazni, Ghori, Tipu Sultan, Aurangzeb and all these people did. Conversely also is true that to make any community feel comfortable, you don't have to whitewash the crimes of the past and present a sanitized view. And you also don't need communities today to valorize these, people who debased your ancestors too. None of the ancestors of communities here came from the Middle East or anywhere else.
But Doc, sorry to interrupt you. There is no blaming today's Muslim community, individual, of what actions were. But if the thought continuum is still there, if they continue to nurture the same thought and the same belief, then what do you say? Okay. After independence, let's Kashi Vishwanath. After independence, why is it still being called a fountain? And a Wazukhana? People are still washing their hand and feet there every day.
True.
Fully knowing well what lies there.
So
they want the courts to prove that what lies there.
True.
Despite knowing fully well. Until 1995, there was puja happening at the back wall. And now it's being stopped. So if you know what is happening, then and you continue to do it, then what do you say?
So that these schisms that have developed are a very good reminder of the fact that the so-called Nehruvian consensus on matters of history has not worked. It is a failed project. And as Dr. Bhairappa, the great Dr. Bhairappa from our own state, he said that even, when he's written his seminal books, Avarana and so many others, that the edifice of national unity cannot rest on the shaky foundations of distorted history. You can distort it and then think that social cohesion and unity can come about, but that's not going to happen. At the smallest whiff of air, truth is the best disinfectant, right? So every time these truth bombs and facts come about, things start shaking. Then there is controversy. Should we rename this city? Should we rename that? Should we reclaim this? So I think we have not made peace with our troubled past. In South Africa, after long centuries of apartheid, you had this whole idea of Ubuntu, right? Truth and reconciliation, where the victim and the perpetrator came face to face and said, I forgive you, it's over, let's shake hands and move on. Here, of course, the victim and the persecutor are not present, but it is intergenerational trauma that continues. And all these places of dispute, these places of contestation are testimonies to that. So it's not necessary that they have to be physically present here, but we are carrying those flight and fright genes in our DNA that our ancestors did, the manner in which they had to literally flee from one place to the other to save their faith, to save their deities, to save everything. So I think that clearing of air and saying no one is responsible for this, but going forward, you're not going to valorize these people. There are certain things which are uncomfortable, so let's not make that as a tenet. And in converse, nobody is going to be demonized for that. I think that making the peace with your troubled past and having this Ubuntu with our very difficult, history, that is very important if we have to move forward. Otherwise, these shaking, earthquakes will keep happening and our society will keep getting ruptured time and time again.
So from the near to the past or the distant itihasa, I'm just saying itihasa, you accept that there is so much of distortion. This nation was partitioned on the grounds of religion. Now to whitewash that itself in our textbooks is a problem, because unless we accept it, we are not going to move forward. So that catharsis has to happen. Questions anymore? I have a question for His Highness once we finish this round. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Sampath Iyengar, founder of Intellect Yoga Institute, and I can share some of the passion as well as the concern that you'll have conveyed.
You share my father's name. Thank you, sir.
Sampath Kumar Melkote, same. So, the tension here is between creating an intellectual ecosystem that Vikram Ji is emphasizing, and the need for transformation that I can see you sort of bristling with that, right? Now, Indians have notoriously become very good at thinking and strategy and notoriously weak at execution. We've seen that in the recent past. There's just one comment I wanted to make, which amplifies my whole concern about these fringes or niches of thought or think tanks that we create not getting mainstreamed. Somebody talked about why the Mysore royal family was not given enough credit for IISc. For people who know the Bhagavad Gita, you'll automatically recognize this as Sattvic Dhanam. In Sattvic Dhanam, you never seek credit. But do we even know that? We don't. So this is the problem, right? I mean, we have all these wonderful scriptures. You're going to come up with brilliant research, great content, but unless it's mainstreamed, this transformation of the consciousness, this overcoming of this colonized mind, is not going to go away. And just now what you finished with. So I think we need to collectively think about what's a roadmap for you to mainstream the intellectual ecosystem, and how do we build the ecosystem, and how does it get into the history books? Because if people are just going to read other books, it's going to be seen as somebody's point of view. So I think I'm going to just stop there, because I think that's the big question.
No, my humble submission as Vikram takes this is, sir, one, that there has to be a flood of scholarly work, literary work, and that's happening. Now, we've taken the names of at least 7 or 8 authors who are doing phenomenal work. There are 15 more. And that number, that tribe is only growing. So more scholarly work is going to add to the literary outpour there. But all of us need to read. Starting with the Srimad Bhagavad Gita that needs to come out of our puja room and get into our bookshelf so that we read 10 pages a day. So it starts from there. Unless we read, we won't educate, we won't ourselves, and we won't learn. And if we don't learn, we don't educate ourselves, we're not going to pass on that knowledge. That's my humble submission, sir.
No, I can't agree enough with you, sir. I mean, I'm completely in agreement with what you said. I think I look at it as a relay race. So, there is, each of us come with our capabilities and competencies. Somehow I feel, I hope I'm not misplaced, that I feel my competence is in research and writing. So as Anand said, I can produce these books either with my own self or with the group of other scholars, and this is then submitted to the society, to the media, to various elements of society, to the government, to families and individuals, and how these then get disseminated and percolates. I think that is completely the next part of the relay match. I really don't know how to do that, because
that also
is certainly not my...
From the Bhagavad Gita, sir, we can only do our karma. We don't have control over the result of it. So that will automatically play out. So we can only do our karma. The result is not in our control. And what comes out of it is also not in our control. So I'm going to, yes, if we cannot contribute, if we cannot do the writing, if we cannot do the research, at least we can back people like Vikram, efforts like the foundation, what he set up. There are others who are doing it. So I think that's the only pitch that I can very humbly make, that in my profession, we're giving them space, we're talking about it openly, and we're putting facts out there. Their literary work we're trying to amplify. If you can back this kind of literary work directed in a particular direction that perhaps interests you, go ahead and do it. And I think that's open up for discussion. Highness, I have a quick question with you, and you've patiently listened. Hope this has been interesting enough. I want to understand, how do you plan to take forward the legacy? See, you're very right that the time of Raja ruling is gone, but a great part of Raja Dharma was, there was a certain level of dharmic capitalism. So you earn money, you collect money, you fill up your coffers, but you also do a lot of dhan, and you also do your dharma of sustaining dharma or sustaining society. What is it for you that you want to look back at your past and do it in the present, so there is a legacy for the future?
Well, I mean, as far as from the dharmic end of things, pretty much across India, from all the princely states, at no point in time did we ever say we gave up our dharmic rights over whatever temples we had and the many endowments our ancestors had given, and then the traditions that were started there or added on to from there, and our participation in it, or being patrons or protectors of dharmic tradition. At no point in time have we ever said we have given that up. And with the successive removal of various rights that were given to us from independence for what we accepted, and then in 72 with the removal of the purses, etc., no point in time have we ever given up our rights towards continuing our dharmic traditions. And Mysore to this day, most famously of course with the Dasara, but throughout the year the Mysore Armane Parampare, as we say, or the Mysore Palace Parampare, is continued pretty much to a T. If the scale of it is not what it was when we were completely, the monarchy was still there, or when it was post-independence and there was control over these aspects in a quasi-public affiliation that was there up to 70. Post-72, it is continued in a private manner. But to this day, we are still follow the entire 10-day rituals of Navratri, from tying the kankna in the morning, being in confinement in the palace for those 10 days, continuing all of the pujas and the vidhis that are there in throughout, and then so do we do at Diwali in Bali Padami and Kamdenu Puja and various other rituals throughout the year. The temples, as I mentioned, we have the gentleman from Melkote here, we have the Vairmudi Utsava there, we have the Rajmudi Utsava, we have the Krishnarmudi Utsava, all of which we may not take part every annually, but we are certainly there every alternate year. And at various rituals, Shrikanteshwara, Chamundi Betta, all of the paramparas in the individual temple, we still take part and continue to be a part of it. And in being a part of it, you're ensuring that that legacy continues, and you understand why that ritual is so, and why the ancestors or their aspirations they poured into those rituals are continuing to be upheld today. So we continue to do that. As far as you said, taking ahead in a Raj Dharma sense, or your continued commitment to upheaval in society. But of course, there are many of our other princely states who have entered politics and been very successful doing so. But Mysore's path, of course, hasn't been through that. We continue to have many legacy trusts, and then subsequently we have also the modern iterations of taking up. I have always said Mysore's tradition and its legacy is not just one in a cultural aspect, but also a legacy of entrepreneurship and of innovation. The many brands that were started under Mysore, the Mysore Sandal Soap, the Mysore Silks, the Mysore Steel, as Vikram mentioned, and number of other industries that were all started were all innovative. The Indian Institute of Science itself came from the idea that we should have our own means of testing out our soil for iron content. That was the seed thought that spurned that. So this idea has been pushed towards in the modern thing. Of course, everybody is in startups. I'm not saying it's a new thing which I'm doing. But in that agenda, towards building economic drivers for Mysore, my foundation in in collaboration with others, have set up Mysore with the aim of being a cybersecurity hub for India, pulling on the weight that Bangalore has as an IT hub. This one pillar or this one section of IT we want to bring to Mysore. So there are several things which we are doing, and our commitment may not be in a public sense, but certainly in a private sense, which it should be for every Indian in your capacity there, is continuing going forward. So as much as we can as private citizens with perhaps a slight bit more of an influence, we continue to do so. And we are always happy to engage with foundations such as Vikram's, any which is looking towards enhancing and resurrecting Bharatiya traditions and Bharatiya history, so that the truth comes out in between all of the muddle that's there. We're most happy to work with it. Of course, we'd love to do it more. South Indian history would be our area of which we would promote, but of course, the entirety of India as a tradition is one. And the Kannada Rajotsava that just finished in November end. Everywhere I said, as a Kannadiga, perhaps not every Bharatiya is a Kannadiga, but every Kannadiga is certainly a Bharatiya. And in Kannada or Karnataka history, coming all the way from the Chalukyas and even before them, the Rashtrakutas and the Vijayanagara or the Karnataka emperors, as we say, they have always found a means to protect Bharatiya Itihasa and Bharatiya traditions here in Karnataka. And so that lineage, I think, Mysore has inherited, and now the people of Mysore, or now Karnataka, have inherited, and I think we are most happy to play our part in that going forward.
He is a master at curating a lot of fests. He does something called Arth, which is in the national capital. It's my very humble request to all of you, including you, Your Highness and Vikram, that if Mysuru soon can become the hub for perhaps the biggest literary and cultural festival that celebrates art, music, culture and history of Dakshina Bharata, and it becomes, that is something which will be phenomenal if can be put together on an annual basis, beyond just the discourses, but to just celebrate and perhaps rejuvenate and resuscitate some of those art forms, some of those literary works, and celebrating that part which celebrates all of what was at one time. If that can be done, I think we'd have done something phenomenal, and I'm there to help however I can. So that's my hand up on that. Please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think after that, I don't have anything much to say. Let us all take a moment and assimilate everything we just heard while we hand over a small token of love and gratitude to Dr. Vikram Sampath and Mr. Anand Narasimhan. I request His Highness to kindly do the honors. I request Shrikara sir to kindly assist.
Just quickly checking, did you all enjoy it? Was it fun? Great. Thank you. I think put your hands together for Vikram and His Highness for supporting such an effort, and also to WMG for putting this together. Well done, Rajesh.
A small token of gratitude to her Maharaja. I request Mr. Sudesh Venkatesh to do the honors, please. And last but not the least, before we let our Maharaja get away, I request Rajesh, Shrikara and Madan to kindly present him with the WMG annual calendar for the year 2024, which actually covers some part of what was spoken here today.
So each month is a different Maharaja, and from the family is phenomenal.
To deliver the closing remarks and propose the vote of thanks, I now call upon Mr. Sudesh Venkatesh. And then we may all proceed for dinner. Thank you.
I didn't realize that I was supposed to give the vote of thanks. I thought it was concluding remarks. Nevertheless, I was given 8 minutes, and since we have overshot time, I'll keep it to 5 minutes. My predicament is like Elizabeth Taylor's 9th husband on the day of the wedding night. And I'll not continue the joke lest the Maharaja banish me from the kingdom of Mysore. I wonder why I was called even to speak here, but I realized that maybe it's got something to do with my surname Venkatesh. Because people who speak here are either Lakshmi Narayans or Sampaths or, or people who have been like the Tirupati Venkatesha, where the Mysore Wadiyars have made a wonderful endowment. I'm an Aam Aadmi from Mysore, and the Wadiyars are revered in my state, in my district, for many reasons. And I'll just give you 5 factoids. And I say this because I don't want to repeat what has already been said, and I'll try to keep it new. First, Chikkadevaraja Wadiyar bought the then city of Bangalore from Emperor Aurangzeb in 1687 for rupees 3 lakhs. That's the price for the area covered by one chair here today, I think. And had it not been for this historic event, we may have seen a very different Bangalore. Of course, Chikkadevaraja Wadiyar may not be very happy with what we have done to the city today. Second, Mysore has lent its name to many things. Mysore Mallige, Mysore Shrigandha, Mysore Pak, Mysore Peta, Mysore Reshme, Mysore Veena, Mysore Yoga, and Mysore Dasara, just to name a few. And in all of this, the Wadiyars have had a wonderful role to play. Third, Mysore is the cultural capital of the state. The Wadiyars themselves were authors and poets. Some of it was referred to here. Chamaraja Wadiyar, Chamarajokti Ulasa, Mummadi Krishnaraja Wadiyar, Udbhara Gite, which was referred to, and more recently, Jayachamrajendra Wadiyar's compositions, which are sung in concerts even today. The Wadiyars built many temples, prominently the Nanjangoodu Srikanteshwara temple, the Mysore Chamundi temple, the Sriranganatha temple in Srirangapatnam, and the Cheluvanarayana Swami temple in Melkote, all standing in full majesty even today. Fourth, the state of Mysore has many firsts, and some of it was mentioned today, but there's one interesting thing. It has many firsts because of the Wadiyars, of course, but also because of excellent commissioners like Lord Bowring, Lord Kabban, and exceptional Diwans like Sir Sheshadri Iyer, Sir M. Vishweshwaraya, and Sir Mirza Ismail, all of whom were knighted by the British. One thing which is the first in Mysore is that it had the first orchestra band in 1868. Lastly, the Wadiyars had a great eye for talent, and particularly Nalvadi Krishnaraj Wadiyar. And the kind of Diwans that he picked up have made the state what it is today. A model state, what it was. That we have slipped to be just a middling state now is unfortunate. And I hope we get back to our premier position sometime in the future. In a lighter vein, a popular saying in Mysore is that you are a Sarvajna. That is, you are omniscient if you know answers to 3 questions. One is, what is special today at Mailari Hotel? Second is, what's the movie running in Ganesha Theatre? And the third is, Mysore Maharajar Uralidara Ilva. Today, I think I can answer all 3. There was some reference to the essence of a Mysorean's philosophy. There was some talk about it. And somebody once told me the philosophy of a Mysorean is captured in 3 phrases. One is, Ayo Papa, sympathy. The second is, Parvaila, it's okay. And the third is, Ogli Bidri, apathy. So Mysoreans in the audience may agree to what I'm saying, hopefully. K.S. Narasimhaswamy, the poet, in his Mysuru Mallige says, Mysurenni, Kannadavenni, Mallige Ella Onde. And Kuvempu says, Kannadada Kushalatege, Kannadada Rasikatege, Kannadada Nipunatege, Kannadiyu Mysuru. Look at the greatness. So, thank you, Wadeyars, for giving us the splendors of such a Mysore. And Chiram Abhivardatam Yadukula Santana Shri. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you, for being such a wonderful audience and patiently sitting. Now, the only thing holding you back from dinner is me, so have a good night and please proceed to dinner. Thank you all.